My hands trembled as I dialed my parents' number, tears blurring my vision. Marcus was gone. My husband, my best friend, the father of my daughter, Emma. The phone rang once, twice. Music and laughter filled the background when Mom answered. Marcus died, I choked out. Can't talk now, honey, she said breathlessly. We're at Sarah's birthday party. Call you tomorrow. The line went dead. I stood in my empty kitchen holding the phone, wondering how 32 years of being their daughter meant less than cake and party games. The morning started like any other day in our modest two-story home in Burlington, Vermont. Marcus was packing for his business trip to Chicago meticulously, folding his navy suits, while 8-year-old Emma sat cross-legged on our bed, swinging her feet and chattering about her upcoming school play. Daddy, you promise you'll be back for my performance on Friday? Emma asked, her hazel eyes wide with concern. Marcus paused his packing and sat beside her, pulling her into a warm embrace. I wouldn't miss it for the world, princess. I'll be back Thursday night, and Friday morning, I'll make your favorite blueberry pancakes before school. I watched from the doorway, my coffee mug warming my hands, feeling that familiar flutter of love seeing my two favorite people together. Marcos caught my eye and winked, that same boyish grin that had captured my heart 10 years ago, still making me weak in the knees. Come here, beautiful, he said, extending his arm toward me. I joined them on the bed, and we sat there for a moment, the three of us intertwined, breathing in the peace of an ordinary Tuesday morning. Emma eventually scampered off to brush her teeth, and Marcus pulled me closer. I hate leaving you two even for a few days, he murmured into my hair. It's just 3 days, I reassured him, though I felt the same reluctance. Besides, the Henderson account is important. You've worked so hard for this. He kissed my forehead gently. Nothing's more important than you and Emma. Remember that. 2 hours later, I stood at our front door watching his silver sedan disappear around the corner. Emma waved enthusiastically from the window until he was out of sight. Neither of us knew it would be the last time we'd see him drive away from our home. The call came at 2:17 in the morning. I jolted awake, my heart immediately racing as I fumbled for my phone in the darkness. No good news ever came at this hour. Mrs. Thompson. The voice was professional but gentle. This is Dr. Sarah Winters from Chicago Methodist Hospital. I'm calling about your husband, Marcus Thompson. My mouth went dry. What happened? Is he okay? There's been an accident. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit your husband's rental car. He's in critical condition. We're doing everything we can, but you should come as quickly as possible. The next hour blurred together in a haze of frantic phone calls and hasty preparations. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor, who had become like a grandmother to Emma, arrived within minutes of my call, her gray hair in curlers, and her housecoat hastily thrown over her nightgown. Go, she said firmly, gathering me into a quick hug. I'll take care of Emma. You just focus on getting to Marcus. The 5-hour drive to Chicago felt like an eternity. I pushed my Honda Civic to its limits, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, prayers tumbling from my lips. I called the hospital every hour, desperate for updates. Each time the news was the same. Marcus was in surgery, fighting for his life. I burst through the hospital doors at 7:23 in the morning, my legs shaking from exhaustion and fear. The antiseptic smell hit me immediately, mixing with the bitter taste of the gas station coffee. I'd gulped down somewhere near the state line. Marcus Thompson. I gasped at the reception desk. He was in a car accident. I'm his wife, Delilah. The receptionist's expression softened with sympathy, a look I would come to recognize and despise in the coming days. She made a quick phone call, then directed me to the surgical waiting room on the 3rd floor. Dr. Winters met me there, still in her surgical scrubs, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. The moment I saw her expression, I knew. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Thompson, she began, her voice heavy with the weight of delivering devastating news. We did everything we could. The impact caused massive internal injuries. He fought hard, but his body couldn't overcome the trauma. He passed away 20 minutes ago. My knees buckled and she caught my arm, guiding me to a chair. The world tilted on its axis, sounds becoming muffled and distant. This couldn't be real. Marcus was supposed to come home Thursday. He was supposed to make blueberry pancakes. He was supposed to be at Emma's play. "Can I see him?" I heard myself ask, my voice sounding strange and far away. They led me to a quiet room where Marcus lay still on the hospital bed. Someone had cleaned him up, tried to make him look peaceful, but I could see the bruising, the evidence of his body's fierce battle to stay with us. I took his hand, still warm but utterly lifeless, and the dam finally broke. I sobbed until my throat was raw, clutching his hand and begging him to wake up, to come back to us, to not leave me to do this alone. But Marcus, my steady, reliable Marcus, remained silent. It was the hospital administrator, Mr. Charles Brennan, who found me there an hour later. He knocked gently before entering, carrying a folder and wearing an expression of professional concern, mixed with something else I couldn't quite identify. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm terribly sorry for your loss," he began, settling into the chair across from me. "I know this is an impossible time, but there's something unusual I need to share with you." I looked up, my eyes swollen and burning. "Unusual?" He shifted uncomfortably. "The morning of the accident, around 8 o'clock Chicago time, your husband participated in a video call with his attorney. According to the lawyer, Mr. Thompson was updating his will, adding some new provisions that he said were urgent." My mind struggled to process this information. His will. But why would he? We updated everything just last year when he became a partner at the firm. "I don't know the details," Mr. Brennan admitted, "but his attorney, a Mr. Harrison from Burlington, asked me to inform you that he needs to speak with you as soon as possible. He said your husband was very specific about protecting certain interests." I stared at Marcus's still form, confusion mixing with my grief. What had been so urgent that he'd updated his will during a business trip? What interests needed protecting? "There's one more thing," Mr. Brennan continued hesitantly. "The police need to speak with you about the accident. The drunk driver survived, and there are some questions about the circumstances." Questions," I repeated numbly. "The driver claims someone called him that night, told him about a bar with a special promotion. He says he doesn't usually drink and drive, that something felt off about the whole evening. The police are investigating whether someone might have orchestrated the meeting between him and your husband's vehicle." The room spun slightly as I tried to make sense of his words. "Are you saying someone wanted to hurt Marcus?" "I'm not saying anything definitively," he replied carefully. "But given your husband's unusual actions that morning, and the driver's claims, the police want to explore all possibilities." I sat in that sterile hospital room, holding my dead husband's hand, as the first tendrils of a darker truth began to wrap around my shattered heart. Marcus hadn't just died in a random accident. Something more sinister was at play, and apparently my husband had sensed danger coming. But from where and why? As I signed the paperwork and made arrangements to transport Marcus's body back to Vermont, his final words to me echoed in my mind. "Nothing's more important than you and Emma. Remember that." Now, with trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone to make the hardest call of my life, to tell our daughter that Daddy wouldn't be coming home to make those blueberry pancakes after all. The drive back to Burlington passed in a fog of exhaustion and disbelief. I'd arranged for Marcus's body to be transported to Sheldon's funeral home, the same place that had handled services for his grandmother 5 years earlier. Every mile that stretched between Chicago and home felt like a betrayal, leaving him behind in that cold hospital. I pulled into our driveway at 4 in the afternoon, my body aching from the drive and lack of sleep. Mrs. Patterson's car was still there, a reassuring sight, but as I turned off the engine, I couldn't bring myself to move. How could I walk into our home knowing Marcus would never follow? How could I face Emma? The front door opened before I could gather my courage. Emma stood there in her pink pajamas, Mr. Buttons, her stuffed rabbit, clutched to her chest. Her face was streaked with dried tears, and the look in her eyes told me everything. "You already know," I whispered as I got out of the car. She nodded solemnly, far too composed for an 8-year-old. "I had a dream last night. Daddy came to say goodbye. He said he had to go on a long trip, but that he'd always be watching over us." My throat constricted as I knelt down and opened my arms. Emma flew into them, and we held each other on our front lawn, both of us shaking with silent sobs. Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway, her own eyes red and puffy. "She woke up at 2:30 this morning," Mrs. Patterson explained softly. "Said her daddy visited her dreams. She's been waiting for you ever since." Inside our house felt different, as if Marcus's absence had already seeped into the walls. His coffee mug still sat by the sink where he'd left it Tuesday morning. His reading glasses perched on the arm of his favorite chair. The normalcy of these objects in the face of such devastating loss felt obscene. My phone buzzed insistently. I'd turned it to silent during the drive, unable to face the flood of messages. Now scrolling through them, most were from concerned friends and Marcus's colleagues who'd heard the news. But it was Sarah's Instagram notification that stopped me cold. There she was, my younger sister posing with a massive 3-tiered cake, surrounded by friends at what looked like an expensive restaurant. The timestamp showed it was posted just an hour after I'd called our parents. The caption read, "Best birthday ever. 30 looks amazing on me. Thanks to everyone who made this night special." The photos continued. Sarah laughing over cocktails, Sarah opening designer presents, Sarah dancing with her latest boyfriend. Our parents featured prominently in several shots, Dad raising a champagne glass, Mom adjusting Sarah's birthday tiara. They looked happy, carefree, completely unbothered by the fact that their other daughter's world had just shattered. "Unbelievable," I muttered, tossing my phone aside. The doorbell rang, and I found Grace Chen standing on my porch holding a casserole dish and wearing the same determined expression she'd had since we became best friends in 3rd grade. Her husband Tom, a detective with the Burlington Police, stood beside her carrying grocery bags. "Don't you dare tell me you're fine," Grace said, pushing past me into the house. "And don't even think about saying you don't need help." For the first time in 24 hours, I felt a tiny spark of warmth. Grace had been my rock through every major life event: my wedding, Emma's birth, Marcus's promotion to partner. Now she was here for the worst day of my life. "Emma's upstairs," I told them. "She's been so quiet. I don't know what to do." Tom set down the groceries and squeezed my shoulder. "Kids process grief differently. Just be there for her. That's all you can do right now." Grace busied herself in the kitchen, putting away food and starting a pot of tea. It was such a normal domestic scene that for a moment I could almost pretend this was just another casual visit. Then I saw Marcus's favorite mug, and reality crashed back. "I need to call his mother," I said suddenly. "Oh God, Margaret, she doesn't know yet." The call to Seattle was excruciating. Margaret Thompson was a force of nature at 72, still running half marathons and volunteering at the library. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright with pleasure at seeing my number. "Delilah, darling, how lovely to hear from you. Is Marcus there? I wanted to tell him about this wonderful investment opportunity I heard about at my book club." The words stuck in my throat. How did you tell a mother her only child was gone? "Margaret," I began, my voice cracking, "there's been an accident." The silence on the other end stretched for eternity, then barely audible. "Is he—" "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "He's gone." The sound she made wasn't quite a scream, wasn't quite a sob. It was the primal keen of a mother's heartbreaking, and it will haunt me forever. "I'm getting on the next flight," she said, once she could speak again. "I'll be there by morning. Take care of my granddaughter. I'm coming." After we hung up, I found Grace standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She'd heard everything. Sarah hasn't even called, has she? Grace asked gently. I shook my head. She's been too busy celebrating her birthday to care that my husband died. That's not normal, Tom interjected from the living room. Even for a self-absorbed person, the lack of any response from your family is... He was interrupted by my phone ringing. Marcus's business partner, James Chen, no relation to Grace despite the shared surname, was calling. Delilah, I just heard. I'm so incredibly sorry, James said, his usually cheerful voice heavy with grief. Marcus was more than a partner. He was my best friend. Thank you, James, I managed. Listen, I don't want to burden you with this right now, but there's something you should know. Marcus called me Monday night before he left for Chicago. He was concerned about some investments he'd been reviewing. He mentioned discovering some irregularities and said he needed to look into it further. My pulse quickened. What kind of irregularities? He didn't give me details, just said it involved some construction company contracts. He was planning to discuss it with me when he got back. Delilah, he seemed really troubled. It wasn't like him to be so cryptic. Construction company. My father owned Thompson Construction, though I'd always found it odd he'd kept our family name for the business, despite having no actual relation to Marcus's family, just another one of Robert Sullivan's power plays. Did he mention my father's company specifically? I asked. James paused. He didn't name names, but given your family connection. Delilah, is there any reason someone might have wanted to hurt Marcus? The question I'd been avoiding since the hospital administrator's revelation hung between us. I don't know, I admitted, but I'm going to find out. After I hung up, I noticed Tom had his detective face on the one Grace laughingly called his bloodhound expression. I can make some unofficial inquiries, he offered. Check if there's any investigation into your father's business, completely off the record. Before I could respond, a sound from upstairs caught our attention. Emma's voice talking to someone. I climbed the stairs quickly, worried she might be having another disturbing dream. I found her in Marcus's home office, standing in front of his desk. The room still smelled like his cologne and the peppermints he kept in the top drawer. Emma was staring at something behind the desk. Honey, what are you doing in here? I asked gently. She turned to me with those two wise eyes. Daddy told me in my dream to remember the birdhouse. I frowned. Marcus had built Emma a decorative birdhouse last summer, painted in purple and pink at her request. It sat on the bookshelf behind his desk, more art project than functional bird home. What about the birdhouse, sweetheart? He said it would keep us safe, Emma replied. Then, as if the moment of strange clarity had passed, her face crumpled. I want Daddy to come home. I scooped her into my arms, carrying her out of the office as she sobbed into my shoulder. But even as I comforted my daughter, my eyes lingered on that colorful birdhouse, wondering what secrets it might hold. Downstairs, Grace had prepared simple sandwiches that none of us could eat. We sat at the kitchen table, the weight of Marcus's absence filling his empty chair. My phone lit up with another notification. Sarah had posted again this time, a group selfie with the caption, "Birthday weekend continues, spa day tomorrow," courtesy of the best parents ever. Oh, 24 hours, I said quietly. My husband has been dead for 24 hours and my family hasn't even acknowledged it. When's the funeral? Grace asked tactfully, changing the subject. Saturday, I decided. Marcus would want it simple but meaningful. He touched so many lives. We'll handle everything, Tom assured me. You just focus on Emma and yourself. As they prepared to leave, promising to return first thing in the morning, Grace pulled me aside. That birdhouse thing Emma mentioned. Kids sometimes know things. Maybe you should check it out. After they left and Emma finally fell into an exhausted sleep, I returned to Marcus's office. The birdhouse sat innocently on its shelf, a bright spot of color among his professional books and awards. I lifted it carefully, surprised by its weight. The bottom panel was loose. Inside, wrapped in plastic, were 2 items, a flash drive and a small key I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I held these mysterious objects. What had Marcus been involved in? What had he discovered that required such secrecy? Through the office window, I caught sight of headlights pulling into our driveway. For a wild moment, Nahayart leapt, thinking somehow this had all been a terrible mistake, and Marcus was home. But the car that sat in our driveway wasn't Marcus's silver sedan. It was a black BMW I didn't recognize, and the figure getting out was definitely not my husband. As the stranger approached our front door, I clutched the flash drive and key, wondering if the danger that had found Marcus in Chicago had now come to Burlington. The doorbell rang, echoing through our too-quiet house, and I had to make a choice: hide what I had found or face whatever truth Marcus had died trying to protect. The stranger at the door turned out to be Marcus's attorney, David Harrison, carrying a briefcase and wearing an expression of professional sympathy mixed with urgency. I recognized him from the firm's holiday party last year, though we'd barely exchanged 10 words then. "Mrs. Thompson, I apologize for coming by so late and unannounced," he said, his gray eyes scanning the street behind him as if checking for followers. "But there are matters that cannot wait." I let him in, still clutching the flash drive and key in my pocket. We sat in the living room, Marcus's absence palpable in every corner. First, let me express my deepest condolences," Mr. Harrison began. "Marcus was not just a client, but a friend. What happened in Chicago is a tragedy." "The hospital said he video called you that morning." I prompted, desperate for answers. He nodded gravely. "At 8:15 Chicago time, Marcus was adamant about adding specific provisions to protect you and Emma. He mentioned discovering something that put your family at risk and wanted immediate safeguards in place." "What kind of safeguards?" "Asset protection primarily, moving everything into irrevocable trusts, adding specific language about family members' access to funds, creating educational trusts for Emma that no one but you could touch." He paused, choosing his words carefully. He also recorded a video message to be played under certain circumstances. "What circumstances?" "If any family member contested the will or if you faced any form of financial coercion from relatives." My blood chilled. Marcus had known. Somehow he'd known our family would come for his money. Mr. Harrison left me with copies of the updated documents and a promise to handle all legal matters. As his BMW disappeared into the night, I wondered how many other secrets my husband had taken to his grave. 3 days had passed since that horrible phone call to my parents. 3 days of silence from the people who were supposed to love me. Margaret had arrived from Seattle as promised, sweeping into our home like a protective tornado, immediately taking charge of Emma while I handled funeral arrangements. I sat in Sheldon's funeral home selecting caskets and flowers, feeling disconnected from my own body. The funeral director, Mr. Sheldon himself, a kind man in his 60s with gentle hands and a soft voice, walked me through options with practiced compassion. Marcus was well loved in this community. He noted, reviewing the growing list of floral arrangements being sent. The Little League wants to know if they can form an honor guard. He coached so many of these boys. The thoughtfulness of strangers contrasted sharply with my family's absence. Even Marcus's employees had called to offer condolences and help, but from my parents and sister, nothing. My phone buzzed with a text. Finally, I thought they're reaching out, but it was Sarah, and the message made my hands shake with rage. "Hey sis, I know things are rough right now, but I already had plans for a spa weekend for my birthday. Can you still make my celebration dinner next Wednesday? Brad really wants to meet the family properly." I stared at the message in disbelief. My husband was being embalmed in the next room, and she wanted to know if I could make her birthday dinner. Margaret, who'd been sitting quietly beside me, read my expression. "Your family?" she asked. I showed her the text. Her face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "My son chose his family wisely when he married you," she said firmly. "But your birth family—" "Delilah, that's not normal. That's cruel." Mr. Sheldon returned with more paperwork, but paused when he saw our expressions. "Is everything all right?" Just family being family, I muttered. He nodded sympathetically, then hesitated. Mrs. Thompson, this might seem odd, but did your husband have any concerns about security? My head snapped up. Security? What do you mean? Well, someone called yesterday asking detailed questions about the funeral arrangements, when life insurance policies would be processed, who the beneficiaries were, that sort of thing. When my assistant asked who was calling, they hung up. Did you recognize the voice? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Actually, yes, it sounded like Robert Sullivan. I've done business with his construction company before. I assumed he was calling as your father, but the question seemed inappropriate. Margaret's hand tightened on mine. They're already circling like vultures, she said quietly. I excused myself to the bathroom, where I finally let the rage flow. My father was investigating my husband's life insurance before he'd even offered condolences. The man who'd walked me down the aisle, who'd shaken Marcus's hand and welcomed him to the family, was more interested in his death benefits than his death. When I returned, Margaret was on her phone speaking in low, urgent tones. She hung up as I approached. I've asked my lawyer to look into some things, she explained. I have resources, Delilah. If your family tries anything, we'll be ready. The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of preparations. Emma helped me choose music for the service, her small fingers pointing to Marcus's favorite hymns in the church hymnal. She'd been quieter than usual, but seemed to find comfort in being included. Grace and Tom practically moved in handling everything from catering to parking logistics. Other friends materialized from nowhere, forming a protective circle around us. Marcus's youth baseball team volunteered to be ushers. His book club offered to provide food for the reception. The community embraced us while my blood relatives remained conspicuously absent. Thursday evening, as I laid out Marcus's burial suit, his phone rang. I'd kept it charged, unable to disconnect this last link to him. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello, I answered tentatively. Is this Marcus Thompson's phone? The voice was elderly, shaking with emotion. Yes, this is his wife. Who's calling? My name is Eleanor Watson. Your husband, he saved my retirement. I just heard about his passing on the news. I'm so very sorry. Saved your retirement, I echoed. I was one of his financial planning clients. 6 months ago, I nearly invested my entire life savings with a construction company that promised huge returns. Marcus spent hours researching them, proved they were running a Ponzi scheme. He saved me from losing everything. My heart rate quickened. Do you remember the company's name? Sullivan Brothers Construction, she said, though I believe it's actually Thompson Construction now. They keep changing names. The room spun slightly. My father's company. After I hung up, I found 3 more voicemails from elderly clients, all with similar stories. Marcus had been quietly protecting vulnerable investors from what appeared to be a massive fraud scheme run by my own father. That evening, Tom pulled me aside. I made those unofficial inquiries, he said quietly. There's definitely an investigation into Thompson Construction, FBI White-Collar Crime Division. It's been going on for months. And Marcus knew, more than knew, from what I can gather, he was cooperating with them. Delilah, he was building a case. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The rushed will update the hidden flash drive, Marcus's urgent trip to Chicago. My father must have discovered Marcus was onto him. Tom, I said slowly, what if the accident wasn't an accident? His detective face returned. I've already made some calls to Chicago PD. They're taking the driver's claims about being set up more seriously now. That night, I sat in Emma's room watching her sleep, Mr. Buttons tucked under her chin. Margaret appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of chamomile tea. She looks just like Marcus when she sleeps, Margaret observed, settling into the rocking chair beside me. He was protecting us. I told her everything I'd learned. He knew they'd come after his money once he was gone. Margaret's face was grim. My son was many things, but naive wasn't one of them. If he hid something in that birdhouse, there's more to find. We sat in comfortable silence, two women bound by loss and love for the same man. Outside Emma's window, a car drove slowly past our house. Then again. And again. That's the fourth time, Margaret noted. I peered through the curtains. A dark sedan with tinted windows crawled past once more before disappearing around the corner. It could be reporters, I said without conviction. The local news had picked up the story, especially given Marcus's prominence in the financial community. Or it could be someone wanting to know if you're home, Margaret countered. Someone who knows the funeral is tomorrow and thinks you might be staying elsewhere tonight. We checked all the locks and set the security system Marcus had insisted on installing last year. As I lay in our empty bed, clutching his pillow that still smelled faintly of his shampoo, I wondered what else my husband had seen coming. Tomorrow we would lay him to rest, but I had a growing certainty that Marcus's death was just the beginning of something darker. My family hadn't reached out because they were planning something. And whatever it was, Marcus had tried to protect us from it even as it cost him his life. Saturday morning dawned gray and drizzling, as if the heavens themselves mourned with us. Emma stood before her mirror in the new black dress Margaret had bought her, her small hands smoothing the fabric repeatedly. "Daddy liked my blue dress better," she said quietly, "the one with the butterflies." "Then wear the blue dress," I told her, kneeling down to her level. "Daddy would want you to wear what makes you feel close to him." She nodded solemnly and changed, transforming from a miniature mourner into Marcus's little butterfly. It was the right choice. Marcus had always brought color into our lives. The church filled early. By the time we arrived, cars lined the streets for 3 blocks. Inside, a sea of faces turned toward us, each carrying their own grief and memories of my husband. The Little League team stood in formation by the door, their young faces serious beneath their baseball caps. Marcus's colleagues from the financial firm filled several pews, tissues already in hand. But it was the back section that caught my attention. Elderly faces I didn't recognize occupied row after row, some in wheelchairs, others leaning on walkers, all dressed in their finest clothes despite the early hour. These, I realized, were Marcus's clients, the ones he'd spent countless hours protecting from predators like my father. And there, sliding into the very last pew as if hoping to go unnoticed, were my parents. Mom wore oversized sunglasses. Despite the cloudy day, her ash blonde hair perfectly styled as always. Dad sat stiffly beside her in an expensive suit I'd never seen before, checking his phone repeatedly. No, Sarah. She hadn't even bothered to show up. "Don't let them ruin this," Margaret whispered, squeezing my hand. "Today is about Marcus." Reverend Williams, who'd married us in this same church 9 years ago, delivered a eulogy that captured the essence of the man I'd loved. He spoke of Marcus's dedication to protecting the vulnerable, his devotion to family, his quiet acts of service that touched countless lives. When he mentioned how Marcus had personally funded new equipment for the youth sports programs, I heard sniffles throughout the congregation. Emma surprised everyone by walking to the podium, clutching a piece of paper. I started to rise to help her, but Margaret held me back. "My daddy was the best daddy in the whole world," Emma began, her clear voice carrying through the silent church. "He made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs and taught me to ride my bike. He said I was his princess, but I should also be strong and smart and kind." She unfolded her paper with shaking hands. "I wrote him a letter. He visited me in my dream, so I know he can hear me. Dear Daddy, I miss you so much it hurts in my tummy. I promise to help Mommy and be brave like you taught me. I'll practice my multiplication tables, even though they're hard. I'll share my lunch with Sally when she forgets hers. Just like you always said, we should help people. And I'll remember our secret handshake forever and ever." Her voice cracked. "I know you're in heaven, now probably teaching the angels about compound interest." A wet chuckle rippled through the crowd. "But I hope heaven has visiting hours because I have so much to tell you. I love you to the moon and back times infinity plus one, your butterfly princess Emma. There wasn't a dry eye in the church. Emma walked back to our pew with her head held high, so much of her father's strength shining through. I gathered her into my arms, breathing in her strawberry shampoo, feeling Marcus's presence in her courage. The pallbearers, Marcus's partners from the firm, carried the casket with reverent care. As we processed behind them, I noticed movement in the back. My parents were leaving, slipping out before the service even ended. But what caught my attention was the man my father stopped to talk to in the vestibule. Someone I didn't recognize wearing an ill-fitting suit and taking notes on a small pad. Grace appeared at my elbow. "Did you see that?" she murmured. I nodded, filing it away. Even at my husband's funeral, Robert Sullivan was conducting business. The graveside service was smaller, limited to close friends and family. The rain had stopped leaving the air fresh and clean. Emma placed a drawing on Marcus's casket, a picture of our family holding hands under a rainbow. Margaret added a photo of baby Marcus in her arms. I kissed my fingertips and pressed them to the cold wood, whispering goodbye to the love of my life. As the casket lowered, a movement in the parking area caught my eye. My parents hadn't left after all. They stood by their Lincoln Town car, obviously waiting. The vultures were circling already. The reception was held in the church fellowship hall, tables groaning under the weight of casseroles and sympathy. I moved through the crowd in a daze, accepting condolences, hearing stories about Marcus I'd never known. He'd quietly paid for groceries when he'd seen clients choosing between food and medication. He'd tutored struggling students in financial literacy for free. He'd been investigating nursing home frauds, targeting the elderly. Each revelation painted a picture of a man who dedicated his life to protecting others, which made his death even more cruel. Delilah. A trembling voice called my name. Eleanor Watson, the woman who'd called about her retirement, approached using a walker. I had to come pay my respects. "Thank you for being here," I said, taking her frail hands. "There's something you should know," she whispered urgently. "Your father approached me last month. After Marcus warned me off the investment, Robert Sullivan himself came to my home. He was very angry that I'd withdrawn my interest. He said Marcus was interfering in family business and would regret it." My blood chilled. "He threatened Marcus, to you?" Not in so many words, but the implication was clear. "Dear, I think your husband knew he was in danger. He called me 2 weeks ago, asked me to document everything about the investment scheme. He said if anything happened to him, I should go straight to the FBI. And have you?" "I'm meeting with them Monday." She squeezed my hands. "Your husband saved my life savings. The least I can do is help bring his killers to justice." Her words echoed as Grace suddenly appeared at my side. "Your parents are coming this way," she warned. Indeed, Mom and Dad were making their way through the crowd, accepting condolences as if they'd been devoted family all along. Mom had removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes that showed no sign of tears. Dad glad-handed Marcus's colleagues like he was at a networking event. They reached me as Eleanor was wheeled away by her daughter. "Delilah, sweetheart," Mom cooed, air-kissing my cheek. "Such a lovely service. Marcus would have been pleased." "Would he?" I asked coldly. "You wouldn't know since you couldn't be bothered to take my call when he died." Dad's jaw tightened. "Now, Delilah, you know Sarah's birthday celebration had been planned for months. We couldn't just abandon her." "But you could abandon me." The words came out flat, emotionless. I was too exhausted for anger. "Let's not make a scene," Mom said, glancing around nervously. "We should talk about practical matters. The funeral expenses must be significant. We want to help." "Help?" I almost laughed. "You want to help now?" Dad leaned in, lowering his voice. "You'll have substantial assets to manage now. Life insurance, Marcus's partnership staked the house. You shouldn't make any major decisions while you're emotional. Let family guide you." There it was. They weren't here to mourn Marcus or comfort me. They were here to stake their claim. Marcus left very specific instructions. I said evenly. Everything is handled. Dad's face darkened. Instructions. What kind of instructions? Before I could answer, James approached with another man I recognized as an FBI agent. Marcus had introduced me to months ago at a charity event. Agent Michael Foster, if I remembered correctly. Mrs. Thompson, Agent Foster said formally, I'm very sorry for your loss. When you have a moment, I'd like to speak with you privately. Dad's face went from red to white. FBI, what's the FBI doing here? Paying respects, Agent Foster replied smoothly. Marcus was assisting with an important investigation. The calculation in Dad's eyes was obvious as he processed this information. He grabbed Mom's elbow. We should go. Sarah's expecting us. They left without another word, practically fleeing the reception hall. I watched them go, noting how Dad immediately got on his phone once they reached the parking lot. Agent Foster waited until they were gone before speaking again. Your husband was a brave man, Mrs. Thompson. His work will save dozens of elderly victims from financial ruin. You think my father killed him? It wasn't a question. I think your husband's death was suspiciously convenient for certain parties, he replied carefully. We're working with Chicago PD to investigate all possibilities. In the meantime, please be careful. Your husband believed you might be in danger too. After he left, I found myself standing alone in the crowd, the weight of Marcus's secrets pressing down on me. Emma ran up her butterfly dress, holding hands with one of her classmates. Mommy Lucy says her grandpa knew Daddy. He says Daddy was a hero. I looked across the room at Lucy's grandfather, one of the elderly clients I didn't recognize. He raised his coffee cup in a silent salute, tears streaming down his weathered face. Yes, baby, I told Emma, pulling her close. Daddy was definitely a hero. Margaret appeared with our coats. Tom just told me there's been a car parked outside your house all day. Same one from last night. I think it's time we weren't there for a while. As we prepared to leave, I took one last look around the fellowship hall. These people, many of them strangers, had shown more genuine grief for Marcus than my own family. They'd come to honor a man who'd fought to protect them, who'd died for his principles. And somewhere in the evidence Marcus had hidden, I was certain lay the proof that would bring his killers to justice. My father thought I was just a grieving widow, emotional and vulnerable. He was about to learn that Marcus had taught me well. The student might become the teacher, and the lessons would be harsh. As we drove away from the church, Emma fell asleep against Margaret's shoulder, emotionally exhausted. In the rearview mirror, I caught sight of the dark sedan following us at a discreet distance. Let them follow. Let them watch. Marcus had set his pieces on the board before he died. Now it was my turn to play. The game was about to begin, and I intended to win. For Marcus, for Emma, for every vulnerable person my father had tried to destroy. Justice was coming whether my family was ready or not. 5 days after we buried Marcus, they came. I was sorting through sympathy cards at the kitchen table while Emma practiced her spelling words in the living room with Margaret. The doorbell's chime shattered our fragile peace, and through the peephole I saw them clustered on my porch like carrion birds. Mom, Dad, Sarah, and a man I didn't recognize, who must have been the infamous Brad. Should I call Tom? Margaret asked quietly, having seen my expression. No, I decided. Let's see what they want. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Dad pushed past me anyway, the others following like they owned the place. The audacity took my breath away. Delilah, honey, Mom chirped, settling onto my sofa uninvited. The house looks the same. I thought you might have started packing. Cracking eyes, I remained standing, arms crossed. Well, surely this place is too big for just you and Emma now, Sarah interjected. She draped herself over a chair, showing off a tennis bracelet I'd never seen before. Plus, the maintenance costs alone must be killing you. Brad, a tall man with slicked back hair and a fake Rolex, extended his hand. Brad Kowalski, sorry about your loss. Sarah's told me so much about you. I ignored his hand. Has she? Funny she hasn't told me anything about you. Emma appeared in the doorway, drawn by voices. The moment she saw my family, she pressed herself against Margaret's side. There's my granddaughter, Mom exclaimed with false enthusiasm. Come give Grandma a hug. No, thank you, Emma said politely. You didn't come when Daddy died. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Sarah had the grace to look uncomfortable, but Dad's face hardened. Children should show respect to their elders, he said sternly. My daddy taught me that respect is earned. Emma shot back, then retreated upstairs with Margaret. Good girl, I thought. Why are you here? I asked bluntly. Dad leaned forward, putting on his concerned father face. We're worried about you, sweetheart. Funeral costs must have been astronomical. The headstone alone probably cost $5,000. 7,000 actually, Sarah added. I Googled it. My stomach turned. They'd been researching funeral costs. Marcus's firm covered everything. I lied smoothly. Professional courtesy. The disappointment on their faces was almost comical. Mom recovered first. Well, that's one blessing, but there will be other expenses. The mortgage, utilities, Emma's education. Have you thought about Marcus's life insurance? There it was, the real reason for their visit. That's being handled by our attorney, I said. Your attorney? Dad's voice sharpened. Why would you need an attorney for a simple insurance payout? Marcus was very particular about his estate planning. Brad suddenly spoke up. I work in insurance. I could help expedite things, make sure you get every penny you're entitled to. What company held the policy? I appreciate the offer, but it's handled. For God's sake, Delilah. Dad exploded, his mask slipping. We're trying to help you. Do you have any idea what you're dealing with? Insurance companies will try to cheat you, delay payments, find loopholes. You need someone who knows the system. Someone like Brad, I asked innocently. How fortunate that Sarah happened to start dating an insurance expert right when my husband died. Sarah's face flushed. How dare you imply a... When did you two meet? I interrupted. Just curious about the timeline. Brad shifted uncomfortably. About 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks, right around when Marcus started his investigation in earnest. Mom stood abruptly. I need to use the powder room. Without waiting for permission, she headed upstairs. I followed, not trusting her alone in my home. I found her in Marcus's office, rifling through his desk drawers. Looking for something? I asked. She didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. Just checking if you need help organizing. So much paperwork when someone dies. Get out of his office. My voice was deadly calm. Now. She huffed but complied. As we descended the stairs, I heard Dad talking to Sarah and Brad in low, urgent tones. Need to find out the policy amount. Check with your connections. They fell silent as we reappeared. I think you should leave, I announced. Delilah, be reasonable, Dad started. More reasonable. You couldn't interrupt a party when Marcus died, but you can case my house 5 days after his funeral. We're family, Mom protested. Family helps family? Family shows up when you're grieving. Family doesn't Google headstone prices and bring insurance adjusters to your home. Dad stood, his face purple with rage. You've always been ungrateful. We raised you, provided for you. And I owe you nothing for doing the basic requirements of parenthood. Sarah gathered, her pursed lips pursed. When you realize you can't handle this alone, don't come crying to us. Brad and I are getting married next year, and weddings are expensive. We could have helped each other. Is that supposed to be a threat? I almost laughed. You want me to fund your wedding with my dead husband's money? That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. Brad steered Sarah toward the door, probably recognizing a losing battle. Dad turned back at the threshold, his expression calculating. $2 million, he said quietly. That's the standard life insurance payout for someone at Marcus's level. $2 million, and you're going to keep it all while your family struggles. What struggles? I demanded. Your construction company. The one under FBI investigation. His face went white, then red. Who told you that? Marcus did, right before he died. Funny timing, wasn't it? The threat in Dad's eyes was unmistakable. Be very careful, little girl. You have no idea what you're playing with. After they left, I found Margaret and Emma in Emma's room. My daughter was crying quietly while Margaret held her. They're mean, Emma said when she saw me. Why are they so mean? I don't know, babe, I admitted, gathering her close. Some people only care about money. Is that why they didn't love Daddy? The innocent question broke my heart. Daddy was trying to stop them from doing bad things. That made them angry. Margaret and I exchanged glances over Emma's head. She'd been recording the entire visit on her phone just in case. We'd learned to document everything. That evening, while Emma slept, I finally examined the flash drive from Marcus's birdhouse. My laptop hummed to life as I inserted it, password prompt appearing immediately. I tried our anniversary, Emma's birthday, various combinations. Nothing worked. Then I remembered Emma's words about their secret handshake. Marcus had taught her a complicated series of moves ending with her touching her nose 3 times. 3 touches. I typed 3 touches. The drive unlocked. Dozens of folders appeared meticulously organized. Financial records, email chains, audio recordings, and a video file labeled for Delilah. My hands trembled as I clicked play. Marcus's face filled the screen, looking tired but determined. The timestamp showed 3 weeks ago. My love, he began, if you're watching this, then my worst fears have come true. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything. I was trying to protect you and Emma from knowing how evil your family really is. He detailed everything: the Ponzi scheme targeting elderly retirees, the shell companies, the money laundering through construction projects. But worse was the personal betrayal. Your father approached me 6 months ago wanting me to legitimize his scheme through my firm. When I refused, he tried to blackmail me, said he'd hurt you if I didn't comply. That's when I went to the FBI. My chest tightened as he continued. I have evidence that several elderly clients who tried to withdraw their investments met with accidents, falls downstairs, car crashes, heart attacks. Delilah, I believe your father is a killer. The video continued for 20 more minutes, Marcus laying out every detail, every piece of evidence. He'd built an airtight case but knew the danger. Robert's getting desperate. He knows the FBI is closing in. If something happens to me, know that I love you and Emma more than life itself. The insurance money is protected, untouchable. Use it to get far away from them. Start fresh. Be happy. His voice cracked. Tell Emma her daddy will always watch over her. And Delilah, thank you for 9 beautiful years. You made me the richest man alive. The screen went dark. I sat in the silence, tears streaming, rage building. A soft knock interrupted. Margaret entered with tea and tissues. I heard everything, she admitted. These walls are thin. He knew he was gonna die, I whispered. He prepared for it. Then let's make sure his sacrifice means something, Margaret said fiercely. We're going to destroy them, Delilah, every last one of them. I thought about Dad's threats, Sarah's greed, Mom's casual cruelty. They thought I was just a grieving widow, easy prey. They were about to learn that Marcus had taught me well, and hell hath no fury like a widow scorned. The flash drive contained enough evidence to bury them all. Now I just had to stay alive long enough to use it. James Chen arrived at 9 sharp the next morning, carrying 3 banker's boxes and wearing an expression I'd never seen on his usually cheerful face. Grim determination mixed with barely controlled fury. Margaret took Emma to the park. He asked, setting the boxes on my dining room table. With Grace and Tom as backup, I confirmed. We're being careful. Good, because what I'm about to show you, Delilah, your father, is worse than we thought. He opened the first box, revealing manila folders marked with elderly names I recognized from the funeral. Marcus spent months documenting everything. He was building a federal case. I saw the video, I told him. He explained about the Ponzi scheme. James shook his head. That's just the surface. Look at this. He spread out photographs, medical records, police reports. My stomach lurched as I recognized some faces. Dorothy Chen, age 78, invested her entire retirement with Thompson Construction. When she tried to withdraw after Marcus warned her, she fell down her basement stairs, broke her neck. Accident. I asked, though I already knew the answer. Her neighbor saw Brad Kowalski leaving her house an hour before she was found. Brad, Sarah's new boyfriend, the pieces clicked horrifyingly into place. There's more. James continued relentlessly. Harold Washington, 82, heart attack in his home. Security footage from across the street shows your father's car parked outside that night. Betty Morrison, 75, drove off a bridge. Her grandson said she'd been receiving threatening calls about her investment withdrawal. Each folder told the same story. Elderly investors who'd tried to reclaim their money met with tragic accidents. The pattern was undeniable. How many? I whispered. 7 confirmed. Marcus suspected at least 3 more. 7 murders. My father had killed 7 innocent people for money. It gets worse, James said, pulling out a new folder. This is why Marcus was in Chicago. The folder contained construction permits, inspection reports, and building plans, all for a new senior living facility funded entirely by stolen investor money. But the plan showed substandard materials, corners cut everywhere. They were going to build a death trap, James explained. Inferior concrete, inadequate fire exits, electrical systems that wouldn't pass any legitimate inspection. Once it was built and occupied, they'd declare bankruptcy, leaving residents in a building that could collapse or burn at any moment. Marcus discovered this. He had an engineering friend review the plans, said it would be a miracle if the building lasted 5 years without a catastrophic failure. Your father was willing to risk hundreds of elderly lives for profit. I had to rush to the bathroom, emptying my stomach as the full horror hit me. My father wasn't just a thief. He was a serial killer who viewed the elderly as disposable sources of income. When I returned, James had set up his laptop. There's something else you need to see. Security footage from Marcus's firm the night before he left for Chicago. The grainy video showed the parking garage. Marcus's silver sedan sat in its usual spot. A figure approached, looked around, then knelt by the rear wheel. Enhancement coming, James muttered, typing rapidly. The image sharpened. Despite the baseball cap and dark clothes, the figure's face became visible in profile. Robert Sullivan, my father, tampering with my husband's car. We think he damaged something subtle, James explained. Not enough to cause immediate failure, but enough to make the car harder to control at high speeds, maybe make it more susceptible to impact. So when the drunk driver hit him, the damage was catastrophic. Marcus didn't have a chance. I stared at the screen, watching my father sabotage my husband's vehicle. This wasn't just conspiracy anymore. This was premeditated murder. Why haven't the police arrested him? I demanded. Because the car was destroyed in the accident. No physical evidence remains. This video alone isn't enough. We need more. A memory surfaced. Emma said she saw Grandpa's car that night. Mrs. Patterson confirmed it. He was checking to make sure Marcus took that car to Chicago. Would they testify? Mrs. Patterson would in a heartbeat. Emma, I won't put her through that unless we have no choice. James pulled out his phone. I've been in touch with the FBI team Marcus was working with. They want to meet with you. Today, if possible. They know about the murders. They know about the fraud. The murders are harder to prove. Old people fall, have heart attacks, get in accidents. Without concrete evidence linking your family to the deaths, they get away with it, I finished bitterly. Not if we can help it. He pulled out the final folder. Marcus found something else. Your father has a partner, someone inside the police department who's been helping cover up the accidents, making sure investigations get dropped, evidence disappears. The corruption ran deeper than I'd imagined. No wonder Dad felt invincible. Does the FBI know about the inside man? They suspect but can't prove it. That's why Tom's been careful about his inquiries. We don't know who to trust. We spent the next hour reviewing evidence, building timelines, preparing for my FBI meeting. With each document, my father transformed further from the man who'd raised me into a monster I never knew existed. Around 11, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Heavy breathing. Then, you should have given them the money. Who is this? A friend. Stop digging or you'll join your husband. The line went dead. My hands shook as I set down the phone. They're getting scared, James observed. Scared people make mistakes. Another call, this time from Margaret. We've had a little incident at the park. We're all safe, but you should know. A man approached Emma at the swings, said he had a message from Grandpa. My blood froze. What message? That Grandpa missed his little girl and wanted to see her soon. Emma screamed and the man ran. Tom chased him but lost him in the parking lot. Come home, now. Already on our way, Tom called for a patrol car to follow us. After they arrived safely, Emma burrowed into my arms, trembling. The man was scary, Mommy. He smiled, but his eyes were mean. Can you tell Detective Tom what he looked like? She described a man in his 40s, medium build with a distinctive scar on his left hand. Tom's expression darkened. I know him. Ricky Morrison, your father's construction foreman, got that scar in a bar fight 10 years ago. Morrison. Why did that name? Betty Morrison, the woman who drove off the bridge. Any relation? His aunt, Tom confirmed grimly. She raised him. Looks like he helped murder the woman who was like a mother to him. The depravity was bottomless. How many others were involved? How deep did this cancer go? That afternoon, I met with FBI agents Foster and Sarah Kim in a secure location downtown. They reviewed everything James and I had compiled, occasionally exchanging significant glances. This is more extensive than we realized, Agent Kim admitted. Marcus was incredibly thorough. Will it be enough? I pressed. Agent Foster leaned back. For the fraud, absolutely. For the murders. That's trickier. We need someone to flip to testify about the killing operation. What about Brad? He's new to the group, might crack under pressure. Already tried. He lawyered up immediately. Your sister chose her allies well. Or my father chose him for her, I said, remembering the convenient timing. There's another angle, Agent Kim suggested. The money. $7 million is missing from the investment fund. It's not in any accounts we can find. Someone has to know where it is. Follow the money, Agent Foster agreed. It always leads to the truth. As I drove home, I noticed the now familiar dark sedan tailing me, but this time there was a second car. They were escalating their surveillance. Back home, Margaret had made dinner while Grace helped Emma with homework. We'd formed our own family unit bound by love and loyalty rather than blood. Any progress? Margaret asked quietly. I updated her on the FBI meeting, watching her face harden with each revelation. Marcus knew they'd retaliate, she said. That's why he prepared everything so carefully. He was protecting you even from beyond. After dinner, Emma asked to sleep in my bed again. As I tucked her in, she looked up with those wise eyes. Mommy, are we safe? I wanted to lie to promise her everything would be fine, but she deserved better. We're being very careful, baby, and lots of good people are helping us. Like Daddy's friends. Exactly like Daddy's friends. She was quiet for a moment. In my dream, Daddy said the angels are watching over us. He said the bad people will lose because love is stronger than greed. Your daddy was very smart, I whispered, kissing her forehead. As she drifted off, I sat by the window watching the street. The surveillance cars were still there, patient and menacing. But now I knew what they'd done, who they really were. Marcus had gathered the weapons. Now I had to use them. The FBI needed someone to crack, to confess, to turn state's evidence. I thought about Mom, the weakest link. always following Dad's lead, always desperate for his approval. If I could get her alone, make her see what she'd become part of. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Your mother shops at Wegmans every Thursday at 10. She goes alone. A second text, a friend of Marcus. Someone inside their organization was having second thoughts. Maybe the net was already starting to close. I looked at my sleeping daughter, then at Marcus's picture on the nightstand. I understand now, I whispered. It was never about the money. It was about stopping them before they killed again. The investigation had just become personal for everyone involved, and I was no longer just a grieving widow. I was a hunter, and I just found my first target. Thursday arrived with unseasonable warmth for late October. I positioned myself in the Wegmans parking lot at 9:45, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. My anonymous tipster had been accurate so far, but trusting anyone felt dangerous now. At 10:03, Mom's white Mercedes pulled into her usual spot near the organic produce entrance. She emerged looking perfectly put together as always designer yoga wear, oversized sunglasses, platinum blonde hair in a precise ponytail. The grieving mother act was notably absent. I intercepted her between the automatic doors and the shopping carts. Delilah, she startled, hand flying to her chest. What are you doing here? We need to talk, privately. I'm meeting Sarah for lunch after this. Then you'd better shop fast. I steered her toward the cafe area, unless you want me to share what I know about Dorothy Chen right here in Frozen Foods. Her face went pale beneath her spray tan. I don't know what you're talking about. 78 years old, broke her neck falling downstairs. Brad was seen leaving her house. Mom's hands trembled as she clutched her designer purse. That was an accident. The police said. The police your husband owns, those police. We sat at a corner table away from other shoppers. Mom kept glancing around nervously as if expecting Dad to materialize. 7 people, Mom. 7 elderly people dead because they wanted their money back. Did you know about all of them? Or did Dad only tell you about some? Stop it, she whispered harshly. You don't understand anything. Then explain it to me. Explain how the woman who taught me to be kind, who volunteered at the senior center, became an accessory to multiple murders. Her composure cracked slightly. They were old. They were going to die anyway. Listen to yourself, I interrupted. Is that how you justify it? They were old, so their lives didn't matter? Your father said. She caught herself pressing manicured fingers to her lips. What did he say, Mom? That it was necessary, that the money was more important than their lives. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her wedding rings. When she spoke, her voice was small. Do you know what it's like to be married to someone like your father? Really know? I'm starting to understand. 28 years. 28 years of doing what he says, being who he wants, never questioning. Because the one time I did. She touched her cheekbone, a gesture so quick I almost missed it. He hits you. Not anymore. Not physically. He found other ways. Her laugh was bitter. Sarah isn't his biological daughter. Did you know that? I kept my expression neutral, though I remembered the investigator's report. Tell me about it. I had an affair. One mistake when you were 3, and Robert was traveling constantly. When Sarah was born, the timing was plausible, but Robert had his suspicions. When she turned 5 and looked nothing like him, he demanded a DNA test. And then he forgave me, publicly, the devoted husband forgiving his wayward wife. But privately, I became his property. Every decision, every penny spent, every friend I could have, all required his approval. He'd bring up my betrayal whenever I showed any independence. So you stayed. Where would I go? He made sure I had nothing of my own. No money, no skills, no support system. And he always said if I left, he'd make sure everyone knew about Sarah. She'd grow up knowing her mother was a cheater and her father was someone else. Who is Sarah's biological father? Mom shook her head. Dead. Car accident when Sarah was 10, very convenient timing. Another accident, another death. The pattern was clear. Mom, he's a serial killer. You know that, right? And you're helping him. Tears finally broke through her perfect makeup. What choice do I have? He tells me what to say, where to go, who to talk to. The night Marcus died, I wanted to leave Sarah's party. I wanted to comfort you, but Robert said no, said it would look suspicious if we rushed to your side. Suspicious. My husband had just died. He said we needed to maintain distance until we knew what Marcus had told you. He was so angry about the investigation. Said Marcus had betrayed the family by going to the FBI. Did you know Dad sabotaged Marcus's car? Her silence was damning. Oh my God, you did. You knew he was going to murder my husband and you did nothing. I didn't know for sure, she protested weakly. Robert just said he was going to make sure Marcus couldn't hurt us anymore. I thought maybe he'd threaten him or kill him, which he did. Mom fumbled for tissues in her purse. I can't sleep anymore. I see their faces. Dorothy used to bring cookies to the senior center bake sale. Harold taught my father how to play chess. They trusted us. Then help me stop him. Her eyes widened in terror. I can't. You don't know what he's capable of, what he's already done to people who crossed him. I know he murdered at least 10 people, including my husband. How much worse can it get? Your father has connections everywhere. Police, judges, city officials. He's untouchable. Nobody's untouchable. The FBI is building a case. They just need someone on the inside to confirm what they already know. She was shaking her head before I finished. He'd kill me. Make it look like another accident. He might kill you anyway. Once the FBI arrests him, who do you think he'll blame? The loyal wife who knew all his secrets. That landed. I could see her processing the logic, the trap that she'd helped build around herself. There's another option, I continued. Immunity. The FBI can protect witnesses who cooperate. You could start fresh away from him. With what money Robert controls everything. With the $7 million you helped him hide. Her sharp intake of breath confirmed my suspicion. She knew where the money was. Mom, those elderly people trusted you. Some of them probably thought of you as a friend. Don't let their deaths be for nothing. She glanced around again, then leaned forward. He doesn't know I know about the money, but I've been married to him long enough to notice patterns. Every month he goes to a storage facility in Plattsburgh, always alone, always carrying empty duffel bags that come back full. Address: North Country Storage Unit 47. But Delilah, there are cameras, security. If he finds out I told you, he won't, not from me. She stood abruptly. I can't do this. I'm sorry about Marcus Sawyer than you'll ever know, but I can't testify against Robert. I'm not brave like you. Mom, wait. That night at Sarah's party, when you called, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried for an hour. My daughter's husband was dead, and I couldn't even comfort her because my husband forbade it. She pulled her sunglasses back on. I'm already dead, Delilah, have been for years. Don't waste your time trying to save me. She walked away, leaving me alone with valuable information and the bitter taste of wasted potential. My mother was a victim, but she was also a collaborator. The line between the two had blurred beyond recognition. My phone buzzed. Text from unknown. Well done. Check your mail tomorrow. I drove home to find 2 police cruisers in front of my house. Heart racing, I ran inside to find Tom in my living room with Margaret and Emma. Everyone's okay, he assured me quickly, but we had visitors while you were gone. He showed me his phone. Security footage from my doorbell camera showed Dad, Sarah, and Brad on my porch. Dad was picking the lock while Brad kept watch. Sarah carried a box of what looked like documents. They were planting evidence, Tom explained. Fortunately, your neighbor called it in as a break-in before they got inside. Patrol units responded and they fled. What kind of evidence? Based on what they dropped in their hurry, forged documents suggesting Marcus was embezzling from his firm, probably planning to discover them during their next visit and use them as leverage. The desperation was escalating. Planting evidence meant they knew the walls were closing in. Can we prove it was forged? Already did. The metadata shows the documents were created yesterday, not exactly master criminals. Emma tugged on my sleeve. Mommy, are Grandpa and Aunt Sarah going to jail? I knelt to her level. Maybe, sweetheart. They've done some very bad things. Good, she said firmly. Daddy wouldn't like them hurting people. That evening, I called Agent Foster about the storage unit. He was quiet for a long moment after I finished. How reliable is this information? My mother's terrified but not lying. She knows where the money is. We'll need a warrant. That takes time and solid probable cause. Then get it. That money is evidence of the murders. We're moving as fast as we can, Mrs. Thompson, but your family seems to be accelerating their timeline too. Please be extra careful. After dinner, I found Margaret on the back porch staring at the stars. Marcus loved astronomy, she said softly, even as a boy, always looking up, trying to understand the bigger picture. He saw this coming, I replied, joining her. All of it. My son was many things, but naive wasn't one of them. He knew your father was dangerous the moment he was asked to join the scheme. She turned to me. But he loved you more than he feared them. That's why he fought. I'm going to finish what he started. I know you will, but Delilah, don't let revenge consume you. Marcus wouldn't want that. Make them pay yes, but then live. Be happy. That's the best revenge against people who worship money above all else. Inside my phone buzzed with another unknown text. Your father knows about Wegmans. Be ready. The game was accelerating. Mom had probably confessed or been caught on store security talking to me. Either way, Dad would retaliate. I double-checked all our locks, set the alarm, and settled in for another sleepless night. Tomorrow, according to my mystery friend, something would arrive in the mail. The net was closing, but I couldn't tell yet who would be caught in it. Them or us. The package arrived at 10:17 the next morning, delivered by a nervous courier who insisted on a signature and photo ID. Inside, wrapped in layers of plastic and tape, were 3 items: a burner phone, a single key, and a note in careful block letters. Marcus trusted me. Now I'm trusting you. Harrison's office. 1 hour. Come alone. David Harrison, Marcus's estate attorney who'd visited the night of the funeral. The man who'd helped my husband build legal walls around our assets. If he was my anonymous source, things were about to get interesting. I arranged for Grace to stay with Emma, and Margaret told them I was meeting with the insurance company and drove to Harrison's downtown office. The building was one of Burlington's oldest all-brick in history. His firm occupied the top floor. Mrs. Thompson, the receptionist, greeted me warmly. Mr. Harrison is expecting you. Please, go right in. Harrison's office was exactly what you'd expect from a successful estate attorney. Dark wood, leather-bound books, diplomas covering one wall. But the man himself looked haggard stress etched into every line of his 60-year-old face. Delilah, please sit. We have much to discuss and limited time. You've been texting me, I said, settling into a client chair. Among other things. He poured himself scotch, despite the early hour hands slightly unsteady. Your husband saved my life. Did you know that? I'm learning Marcus saved many people. No, I mean literally. 6 months ago, your father approached me about creating shell companies for his operation. I refused. The next night, my brakes failed on Mountain Road. Would have gone over the cliff if Marcus hadn't been following me home from a late meeting. He saw my brake lights weren't working, called 911, helped pull me from the car before it went over. Another accident that wasn't. He knew it was a warning, Harrison continued. That's when we started working together. Really working together. Not just estate planning, but building a legal case against your family. Why didn't you come forward after Marcus died? Because I was waiting for this. He pulled out a thick folder from his safe. The will reading, official and recorded. Your family thinks they know what's in Marcus's will because they've been pressuring my paralegal for information. She's been feeding them false details on my instruction. What did you tell them? that Marcus left everything in a standard trust, accessible, contestable, that you'd need family support to manage it properly. His smile was sharp. They believe there's 2 million in life insurance and another million in assets all within reach if they play their cards right. And the reality? Your husband was brilliant, Delilah. Absolutely brilliant. He spread out documents. First, the life insurance, not 2 million. 5 million from 3 separate policies purchased over the years, all with different companies, all with ironclad beneficiary designations that can't be contested. My breath caught. 5 million. Marcus had been planning for disaster longer than I'd realized. But that's just the beginning, Harrison continued. His partnership stake in the firm worth another 2 million. The house paid off last year without telling anyone. His investment portfolio, let's just say your husband was very, very good at his job. How much total? Between insurance assets and investments, roughly $12 million. The room spun slightly. We'd lived comfortably, but not extravagantly. Marcus drove a 5-year-old Honda. I clipped coupons. We'd been sitting on $12 million. He lived modestly on purpose, Harrison explained, reading my expression. Never wanted to attract attention, especially from your family, but he invested every bonus, every commission building a fortress of wealth to protect you and Emma. They have no idea. None. And here's where it gets beautiful. Every penny is in irrevocable trusts, educational trusts for Emma that no one but you can access, a living trust for you with built-in protections against family interference, and my personal favorite, the restitution clause, which is, if any family member contests the will or attempts to claim money through coercion, harassment, or legal action, an automatic donation of $1 million goes to a fund for victims of elder fraud, specifically your father's victims. Marcus had thought of everything. He'd built a financial fortress with a moat full of legal alligators. There's more, Harrison said, pulling out a tablet. The video message I mentioned, he recorded several. Different scenarios, different revelations. This one is specifically for if your family attends the will reading. They'll be there, I assured him. Wild horses couldn't keep them away. Good, because what Marcus reveals in that video, combined with the evidence you've been gathering, should be enough to crack this case wide open. He leaned forward. Your husband documented everything, Delilah. Every threat, every suspicious accident, every attempted bribe. He wore a wire to several meetings with your father. It's all admissible evidence. Where are the recordings? Safe deposit box. He slid the key across the desk. The one from the package. Bank of Vermont downtown branch. Box 1247. Everything's there. Why didn't you give this to the FBI immediately? Because Marcus made me promise to wait until after the will reading. He wanted your family to show their true colors officially on record in front of witnesses. He knew they'd threaten you, try to manipulate you, maybe even admit to crimes thinking they were about to get paid. You're using me as bait. Marcus's plan, not mine, but yes, the will reading is scheduled for Monday at 2 p.m. The FBI will be monitoring everything. Your family just has to be themselves, and they'll provide all the evidence we need. What if they don't show? Harrison laughed grimly. Oh, they'll show. My paralegal already confirmed your father called 3 times yesterday, trying to move the date earlier. They're desperate, Delilah. The FBI is freezing assets, investigating contracts. Your father's empire is crumbling, and he thinks your husband's money is his lifeline. He killed Marcus for money he'll never see. Poetic justice. Marcus would have appreciated that. We spent another hour reviewing details, preparing for Monday. As I stood to leave, Harrison handed me one more envelope. Marcus asked me to give you this privately, said you'd know when to open it. The envelope was light personal. I tucked it into my purse. David, why risk all this? You could have stayed neutral, protected your practice. He smiled sadly. I'm 70 years old, Delilah. No children, no legacy except the law I've practiced for 40 years. Your husband offered me something I'd lost purpose. the chance to be part of something that mattered, to fight for justice instead of just filing paperwork. Thank you, I said simply. Don't thank me yet. Monday is going to be brutal. Your family won't go down without a fight. Driving home, I detoured to the Bank of Vermont. The safe deposit box was small but heavy with significance. Inside were mini cassette tapes, USB drives, and a notebook in Marcus's precise handwriting. I took everything planning to review it with FBI agents before Monday. At home, I found chaos. 2 police cars, an ambulance, and my front door wide open. I ran inside heart-pounding to find Margaret being treated by paramedics while Emma clung to Grace. What happened? I demanded. Attempted kidnapping, Tom said grimly. 2 men tried to grab Emma from the backyard. Margaret fought them off with a garden rake, but they shoved her pretty hard. Possible concussion. I'm fine, Margaret insisted, though she was holding an ice pack to her head. They didn't get Emma. That's what matters. Did you recognize them? One was Ricky Morrison, your dad's foreman. The other was younger, maybe mid-20s. They said they were taking Emma to see her grandfather, that you'd approved it. I told them Mommy would never send strangers, Emma piped up. Then Grandma Margaret went crazy with the rake. It was awesome. Even terrified, my daughter had kept her head. Marcus would have been so proud. We've got bolos out on both men, Tom assured me. This escalation changes things. Attempted kidnapping of a minor, that's federal. The FBI arrived within an hour, setting up protective surveillance on our house. Agent Foster looked grimmer than I'd ever seen him. Your father's getting desperate. Our investigation is tightening. His assets are frozen, and now he's making stupid mistakes. Trying to kidnap Emma was probably meant as leverage for Monday's will reading. He thought he could trade her for money, I said, sickened. Most likely, we've been monitoring his calls. He owes dangerous people significant sums. The construction company is bankrupt in all but name. Without a major cash infusion by Monday, he's facing more than just federal charges. Mob connections. Let's just say your father borrowed from people who charge interest in blood, not percentages. Margaret, despite the paramedics' protests, refused to go to the hospital. I'm not leaving my girls, she said firmly. Besides, I've had worse bumps falling off horses. That evening, as Emma slept between Margaret and me in my bed, I finally opened Marcus's personal envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper in his handwriting. My dearest Delilah, if you're reading this, then David has explained everything. I'm sorry for the secrets, for the danger I've brought to our door. But I need you to know that every choice I made was to protect you and Emma. Your family is sick, my love. The greed has poisoned them beyond redemption, but you are always different. You chose love over money, integrity, over comfort. That's why I fell in love with you the moment we met. The will reading will be hard. They'll say terrible things, make horrible threats. But remember, they have no power over you anymore. I made sure of that. Let them reveal themselves. Let them hang themselves with their own words. And then when it's over, take our daughter and run. Not from fear, but toward freedom. Show her the world. Teach her to be generous and kind. Live the life we dreamed of. I'll be watching over you both always. Every sunset, every Emma giggle, every moment of joy. I'll be there. Love doesn't die, Delilah. It just changes form. Forever yours, Marcus. P.S. Check the birdhouse one more time. Emma will need it for what comes next. Tears blurred the words as I read them again. Even facing death, Marcus had thought of us, planned for us, loved us. Outside, I could see the FBI surveillance van parked discreetly down the street. Monday's will reading would be the culmination of everything Marcus had built. The trap was set, baited with money that would never materialize. I kissed Emma's forehead, then Margaret's, grateful for the family I'd chosen over the one I'd been born into. Come Monday, the masks would finally fall. And my father would learn what happened when you murdered a man who'd spent months preparing for his own death. Saturday morning arrived with storm clouds and the kind of bone-deep chill that promised winter was coming early to Vermont. I stood at my kitchen window watching the FBI surveillance team change shifts when my phone rang. Dad's number. Delilah. His voice was strained, lacking its usual commanding tone. We need to talk, face to face, today. We'll talk Monday at the will reading. This can't wait until Monday. A pause. Please, I'm still your father. The man who raised me wouldn't have murdered my husband. Just hear me out. 1 hour, public place. You can bring whoever you want for protection. His desperation was palpable. The coffee house on Church Street, noon. I agreed mostly to see what desperate move he'd attempt next. After calling Agent Foster to arrange surveillance, I found Margaret in Emma's room reading her a story. Let me go with you, Margaret said immediately when I told her. You have a concussion. Mild one. Besides, I want to look the man who killed my son in the eye. Grace arrived to watch Emma bringing Tom and 2 off-duty police friends. Our house had become a fortress. Downtown Burlington's Church Street was bustling with weekend shoppers despite the cold. The coffee house sat in the middle of the pedestrian mall, floor-to-ceiling windows, offering perfect sightlines for FBI surveillance. I spotted at least 3 agents pretending to shop nearby. Dad was already there, hunched in a corner booth. He looked terrible. Unshaven clothes wrinkled the mighty Robert Sullivan, reduced to a desperate old man. Sarah sat beside him nervously, shredding a napkin. No sign of Mom or Brad. Where's your mother? Dad asked as we sat down. Recovering from your thug's attack, Margaret replied coldly. He had the decency to look ashamed. That wasn't supposed to happen. They were only meant to pick up Emma for a grandfather visit. Without my permission. That's kidnapping. I'm her grandfather. I have rights. You have nothing, I said evenly, and after Monday you'll have even less. Sarah leaned forward. Delilah, please. We're family. Whatever's happened, we can work through it. Work through it, like you worked through Dorothy Chen, Harold Washington, Betty Morrison. Sarah's face went white. Those were accidents. Sarah, shut up, Dad snapped. 7 accidents, Sarah, all elderly people who wanted their money back, all dead within weeks of trying to withdraw their investments. That's circumstantial, Dad started. Your foreman, Ricky Morrison, was seen at Dorothy's house. You were caught on camera near Harold's home. Brad's fingerprints were on Betty's car. The silence stretched taut. Finally, Dad spoke. What do you want? Justice for Marcus, for all of them. Bob Marcus betrayed this family, he snarled, mask slipping. I offered him everything, partnership in the business wealth beyond imagining, and he chose them over us. He chose right over wrong. Right, wrong, those are luxury concepts for people who've never built anything. His fist hit the table. I started with nothing. Nothing. Worked construction since I was 16, built my company with blood and sweat. And when the economy tanked, when legitimate contracts dried up, was I supposed to just give up? Let everything I'd built die? So you decided to kill instead. They were old, Sarah burst out. They lived full lives. We have our whole futures ahead of us. Margaret's hand clenched on her cane. My son had his whole future ahead of him, too. Marcus stuck his nose where it didn't belong, Dad said coldly. If he'd just minded his own business. You sabotaged his car. I kept my voice level despite my rage. You're on camera tampering with it the night before he left. His poker face finally cracked. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. Marcus recorded everything. Every meeting, every threat, every admission. It's all evidence now. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone and played a snippet of audio. Dad's voice filled the coffee shop. Don't care if she's 90. She signed the contract. If she tries to withdraw, she'll have an accident like the others. I stopped the recording. Around us, normal life continued. People drinking lattes, typing on laptops, unaware of the murder confession playing at our table. How much? Dad asked quietly. Excuse me. How much to make this go away? Marcus had $2 million in insurance. I'll match it. $4 million total. You and Emma disappear, start fresh somewhere. We all walk away. You think this is about money? Everything's about money. He leaned forward intensely. 4 million buys a lot of silence. Emma gets the best schools, best opportunities. You never have to work again. With blood on every dollar. 5 million, Sarah interjected desperately. We can get 5 million by Monday. From where your company's bankrupt assets frozen. Dad and Sarah exchanged glances. We have resources, he said carefully. The missing 7 million from the investment fund. His jaw tightened. 6 million. Final offer. You killed my husband. You killed 7 innocent people, and you think I'll take a payoff. Be smart, Delilah. You have a daughter to think about. Testifying trials, media attention. Do you want Emma growing up with that? Take the money. Move away. Live happily ever after. Margaret laughed harshly. You really don't understand, do you? This isn't about money. It's about justice. Justice. Dad sneered. Justice is a fairy tale. There's only power and those too weak to take it. Is that what you told yourself when you pushed Dorothy down the stairs? I asked. That she was too weak. I never touched. He caught himself. But you ordered it, just like you ordered Marcus's death. Prove it, he challenged. I don't have to. You're going to confess everything at the will reading Monday. He laughed. Oh, why would I do that? Because you think there's $12 million at stake, and you're desperate enough to say anything to get it. Sarah grabbed Dad's arm. 12 million. The lawyers said to... The lawyers told you what I wanted you to know, I said. Monday, you'll learn the truth. About the money. About Marcus's plans. About everything. You're lying. But doubt flickered in Dad's eyes. Show up Monday and find out. Bring Mom, bring Brad, bring lawyers. It won't matter. I stood to leave Margaret beside me. Dad's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. You don't walk away from family. I learned from the best. I pulled free. You walked away from me the night Marcus died. If you don't take the money, his voice dropped to a whisper, Emma might have an accident. Children fall off playground equipment all the time. The coffee shop seemed to freeze. Even the espresso machine fell silent. Did you just threaten my granddaughter? Margaret's voice was deadly quiet. I'm just saying accidents happen, even to little girls who don't listen to their grandfathers. I smiled coldly. Thank you. For what? For making that threat in a public place with multiple FBI agents listening. I gestured to the surrounding tables where several shoppers had turned our way. That's conspiracy to commit murder of a minor. Federal offense. No bail. Agent Foster materialized beside our table. Robert Sullivan, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping and murder of a minor child. Dad's face went from red to white. You set me up. You set yourself up the moment you threatened Emma. As Foster cuffed him, Dad looked at me with pure hatred. You're not my daughter. Finally, something we agree on. Sarah jumped up. Daddy, I'll call Brad, get lawyers. Sarah Chen. Agent Kim appeared. You're under arrest as an accessory to murder and fraud. But I didn't. She looked at me pleadingly. Delilah, please. You just said the elderly victims lived full lives. That's admission of knowledge of the murders. As they led them away, Dad turned back one last time. The others will come for you. People I owe money to. This isn't over. Yes, I said firmly. It is. The coffee shop erupted in whispers as the FBI escorted them out. Margaret sagged against me, suddenly looking all of her 72 years. It's done, she whispered. He's going to pay for killing my son. It's not done yet. We still need the evidence from the storage unit, the full confessions, the money trail. But it's a start. She squeezed my hand. Marcus would be proud. We drove home in comfortable silence. The storm clouds had broken while we were inside, leaving the world fresh and clean. Appropriate weather for washing away the filth of my family. At home, Emma ran to greet us. Mommy, Grandma, Margaret, did you catch the bad guys? Some of them, sweetheart, I said, hugging her tight. Good. They made Grandpa Robert mean. Maybe now he can be nice again in jail. The innocence of children. She still believed people could change, that there was good in everyone. I wouldn't disillusion her yet. That evening, Agent Foster called with updates. Your father's lawyered up, but it doesn't matter. We have him on tape threatening Emma. That's federal kidnapping conspiracy, 25 to life. Sarah's singing like a canary trying to cut a deal. What about the murders? She's confirmed knowing about them, but claims Brad did the actual killing. We're hunting for him now. And my mother? Still in the wind, but Delilah. Your father was right about one thing. He owes money to dangerous people. We're increasing protection on you and Emma. For how long? Until we round up all his associates. Could be weeks. I looked at Emma doing homework at the kitchen table, Margaret helping her with fractions. My strange, beautiful, chosen family. We'll be ready, I told him. Monday's will reading would still happen, but with key players missing. Dad would watch from a federal cell as Marcus's final trap played out. The fortune he'd killed for would slip through his fingers like sand. But first, I had a birdhouse to check and a daughter to protect. Marcus's last message suggested Emma would need something hidden there. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. The threats were real, but so was our love. And love, as Marcus always said, was the only wealth that mattered. The birdhouse held one final secret. Hidden in a small compartment I hadn't noticed before was a USB drive wrapped in plastic. The attached note in Marcus's handwriting simply said, "For Emma when she's older, but you'll need it Monday." I plugged it into my laptop, finding a single video file labeled "Truth for Emma." My hands trembled as I clicked play. Marcus appeared on screen, sitting in his office. The timestamp showed 3 weeks before his death. "Emma, my precious butterfly," he began, his voice warm but serious. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone, and your mother needs to show you something important. You're probably scared and confused, wondering why Grandpa Robert and Aunt Sarah would hurt people." He leaned forward, speaking directly to the camera. "Sometimes sweetheart people let greed poison their hearts. They forget that love is more valuable than money. Your grandpa forgot this, and it made him do terrible things. But here's what I need you to understand. His choices don't define you. His sickness isn't in your blood." The video continued for 10 minutes, Marcus explaining in age-appropriate terms why he'd had to gather evidence, why he'd worked with the FBI, why protecting innocent people was worth any risk. He ended with words that broke my heart. "Be brave, my butterfly. Take care of mommy. And remember, every time you help someone, every time you choose kindness over greed, you prove that love wins. I'll be watching from heaven, cheering you on. I love you, infinity plus 1. I closed the laptop, wiping away tears. This wasn't just evidence. It was Marcus's way of protecting Emma from the psychological damage of learning her grandfather was a killer. Sunday arrived with news that rocked our temporary peace. Grace burst through our door at 7 a.m., still in her pajamas. "Turn on the news, now." The local channel showed a familiar face. Brad Kowalski, Sarah's boyfriend, had been found dead in Lake Champlain. The reporter noted signs of torture before drowning. "Dad's creditors," I said quietly. "They're cleaning house." "Which means you could be next," Tom said, having followed Grace over. "They might think you have access to the hidden money." Margaret ushered Emma upstairs away from the television. The poor child had seen enough darkness. My phone rang. "Mom." "Delilah, I'm scared." Her voice was barely a whisper. "They came to the house last night. Men with guns looking for Robert's money. I barely got away." "Oh, where are you?" "Motel 6 off Route 89, room 12. Please, I have nowhere else to go." I looked at Tom, who was already reaching for his keys. "We'll bring her in safely," he assured me. An hour later, Mom sat in my living room looking haggard and old. Designer clothes replaced with a gas station sweatshirt, perfect manicure chipped and broken. Fear had stripped away her careful facade. "Tell me about the men." Tom said all business. "3 of them. Russian accents. They said Robert owes them $8 million. Said if they can't get it from him, they'll take it from his family. She looked at me desperately. I told them I don't know where the money is. But you do, I reminded her. The storage unit in Plattsburgh. Her face crumbled. I lied. Robert moved it after you and I talked at Wegmans. I don't know where. He knew you'd talk to me. Store security footage. He had someone checking. She laughed bitterly. 28 years of marriage and he still didn't trust me to buy groceries alone. These Russians, Tom interjected. Did they say anything else? They know about the will reading tomorrow. Said they'll be watching. If Robert hid money in Marcus's estate, they want it. The stakes kept rising. Now we had the FBI, my family, and Russian mobsters all converging on tomorrow's will reading. But Mum, I said carefully, I need you to do something for your own safety and Sarah's. Sarah's in federal custody. She's safe. From the Russians, they killed Brad to send a message. Sarah's next, unless we give them something else to focus on. Well, like what? Like the real location of the money. You said Dad moved it after Wegmans, but you've been married to him for 28 years. You know his patterns, his habits. Think, where would he hide $8 million? She was quiet for a long moment, then her eyes widened. Oh my God, the boat. What boat? He bought a yacht 6 months ago, said it was for entertaining clients, but he never took anyone on it. Always went alone always at night. It's moored at Burlington Harbor, slip 47. Tom was already on his phone calling the FBI. Within minutes, we had confirmation. Robert Sullivan owned a 50-foot yacht called Golden Years. A cruel joke considering where the money came from. Agent Foster arrived with a team taking Mom's statement. We'll need a warrant for the yacht, but this is huge. If the money's there, it directly ties him to the murders. What about the Russians? I asked. Let us worry about them. Your job is to get through tomorrow's will reading safely. That afternoon, Margaret, Emma, and I visited Mrs. Patterson next door. She'd been Marcus's informal neighborhood watch, and her sharp eyes missed nothing. I've been wondering when you'd come by, she said, serving us tea in her doily-covered living room. I have something for you. She produced a shoebox filled with photos and notes. I started documenting things after Marcus asked me to. Every time your father visited, every strange car, every unusual occurrence. It's all here. The box was a gold mine. Photos of Dad meeting with known criminals. License plates of vehicles that had stalked our house. Even pictures of Brad trying to break into our garage. Marcus said you might need evidence someday, Mrs. Patterson explained. Said you were stronger than you knew. Why didn't you give this to the police earlier? He told me to wait until you asked. Said timing was everything. She patted my hand. Your husband was a brilliant man, dear. He saw this coming and prepared for every contingency. That evening, we had an unexpected visitor. Nancy Sullivan stood on our porch, looking nothing like the perfect suburban mother I'd known. Her hair was disheveled makeup, smeared designer clothes, wrinkled. Mom, I opened the door cautiously. What happened? The FBI raided the yacht, she said numbly. Found the money, all $7 million hidden in false compartments. Robert's going away for life. Yeah, $7 million, but the Russians think it's 8. Because Robert told them that to buy time. He was planning to run with the extra $1 million. She laughed hysterically. He was going to abandon us all. Had fake passports, everything. Margaret appeared with a blanket wrapping it around Mom's shoulders. Even after everything, she showed compassion for the woman who'd enabled her son's killer. There's more, Mom continued. In the yacht, they found journals. Robert documented everything. Every murder, every payoff, every crime. He was proud of it. Called it his empire building. Why document crimes? Tom asked. Insurance. If his partners ever turned on him, he could take them all down. He trusted no one. She looked at me. Not even family. The FBI took her into protective custody that night. 2 parents arrested 1 sister in federal detention. My entire birth family destroyed by greed. But as I tucked Emma into bed, she said something that shifted my perspective. Mommy, I'm sad about Grandpa and Grandma and Aunt Sarah, but I'm not alone. I have you and Grandma Margaret and Mrs. Patterson and Grace and Tom. That's more family than some kids have, right? Right, sweetheart. And tomorrow, when they read Daddy's will it help catch all the bad people? I hope so. Good. Then Daddy's still protecting us, isn't he, even from heaven? Yes, baby, he is. After she fell asleep, Margaret and I sat on the porch despite the cold wrapped in quilts and sipping Marcus's favorite whiskey. Tomorrow's gonna be intense, Margaret said. The FBI will have the room surrounded, agents posing as clerks, security, other clients. Anyone who shows up with ill intent will be arrested. And the will itself will destroy any hope they had of getting Marcus's money. David Harrison confirmed the victim restitution clause is ironclad. Every penny will go to helping the people they hurt. Poetic justice. We sat in comfortable silence, two widows bound by loss and love. The stars were brilliant in the clear sky, and I could almost feel Marcus watching. He'd be proud of you, Margaret said softly, standing up to them, protecting Emma, seeking justice instead of revenge. I wanted revenge, I admitted. Still do sometimes. But you chose justice instead. That's what makes you different from them. A car drove slowly past, not unusual given the FBI protection, but something about it made me look closer. An expensive sedan with tinted windows moving too deliberately to be casual. Margaret, get inside, I said quietly. As we stood, the car accelerated away, but not before I glimpsed the driver, a man with Slavic features and cold eyes. The Russians knew where I lived. Tomorrow's will reading had just become even more dangerous. Inside, I called Agent Foster. We may have a problem. We know. We've been tracking them. 3 known associates of the Bratva have been spotted around Burlington. They're definitely interested in tomorrow. Should we postpone? No, this is our chance to catch them all. We'll have SWAT on standby. Anyone makes a move, we'll stop them. I hung up and checked on Emma one more time. She slept peacefully, Mr. Buttons clutched tight, unaware of the danger circling our family. Tomorrow would bring either justice or disaster. Marcus had set the board, placed the pieces, written the rules. Now I had to play the game to its conclusion. Guide me, my love, I whispered to his photo. One more time. The trap was set. The players were converging, and Marcus's final message would soon be delivered. Win or lose by tomorrow night, it would all be over. Monday morning dawned crisp and bright, the kind of autumn day Marcus had loved. I dressed carefully in the navy suit he'd bought me for our anniversary, feeling like I was putting on armor for battle. Emma wore her butterfly dress again, insisting Daddy would want her to look pretty for his special day. At breakfast, I gave her a choice. You can stay with Mrs. Patterson or come with us, but if you come, you might hear some difficult things about Grandpa. I want to come, she said firmly. Daddy said in my dream that I should be there, that I'm braver than I think. Margaret nodded approvingly. The child has Thompson steel in her spine. Agent Foster called with a situation update. We've identified 5 members of the Russian outfit in Burlington. They're definitely planning something for the reading. We'll have agents at every entrance, every exit. Snipers on surrounding buildings. Well, snipers, is that necessary? These aren't street thugs, Delilah. The Bratva doesn't play games. $8 million is worth killing for in their world. $7 million, I corrected. Dad lied to them about the amount. Which makes them even more dangerous. They don't like being cheated. The private investigator Marcus had hired Alan Cortez arrived at noon with a thick folder. Mrs. Thompson, I've been holding on to this per your husband's instructions. He said to give it to you the day of the will reading. He handed me the folder. It's everything I found about the Chicago connection. Inside were phone records, surveillance photos, and witness statements. The evidence painted a damning picture. Robert had contacted associates in Chicago arranging for the drunk driver to be at a specific bar on a specific night. They'd calculated Marcus's route from his hotel, timed everything perfectly. This proves premeditation, I breathed. There's more, page 12. I flipped to find photocopies of checks. Robert had paid the drunk driver's family $50,000 after the accident, disguised as a charitable donation to their church. Blood money, Margaret said, reading over my shoulder. The driver's ready to testify, Cortez added. He's been in protective custody since last week. Says Robert's people got him drunk, kept buying rounds, then suggested he drive to another bar for a special event. They even gave him the keys to a rental car. Why would he agree to testify he killed Marcus? Because he's facing vehicular manslaughter either way, but if he cooperates, confirms it was orchestrated, he gets a reduced sentence, 5 years instead of 20. It wasn't enough, 5 years for taking Marcus's life, but it would ensure Robert got murder charges instead of just fraud. There's one more thing, Cortez said quietly. Your husband hired me to investigate something else. Your sister Sarah's biological father. My pulse quickened. Mom said he died in a car accident. He did. 3 days after contacting a lawyer about establishing paternity and seeking visitation rights. He showed me the police report. Single car accident. Brake failure. Another murder. How many bodies had Robert left in his wake? Thank you, I managed, for everything. Your husband was a good man, Mrs. Thompson. It's been an honor to help get justice for him. At 1:30, we arrived at Harrison's office building. FBI agents in plain clothes loitered near entrances pretending to check phones or window shop. I spotted the surveillance van parked across the street, antennas carefully concealed. Inside, Harrison greeted us warmly. Everything's prepared. The reading room is wired for sound and video. Whatever happens will be thoroughly documented. Who's confirmed to attend? I asked. Oh, well, your father and Sarah are indisposed for obvious reasons, he said delicately. But your mother's here in protective custody escort. Brad's estate representative since he died without a will and had potential claims. And, he paused, 3 gentlemen who claim to be creditors of the estate. Russians. Almost certainly, but we have to allow them in. Legal proceedings are generally public. The reading room was large, formal, with a long mahogany table and leather chairs. Mom sat at one end, flanked by 2 federal marshals. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. Delilah, she whispered as we entered, I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't respond, taking my seat with Emma on one side and Margaret on the other. The 3 creditors entered next, and my blood chilled. These weren't just muscle. These were professionals. Expensive suits couldn't hide the prison tattoos peeking from collars and cuffs. The leader, a man with silver hair and dead eyes, nodded politely. Mrs. Thompson, we are here regarding legitimate business with your late husband. My husband had no business with you, I said evenly. Perhaps not directly, but debts pass through families, yes. Before the tension could escalate, Harrison cleared his throat. Shall we begin? This is the last will and testament of Marcus James Thompson, executed with amendments on October 15th of this year. He read through the standard language while I watched everyone's reactions. Mom stared at her cuffed hands. The Russians leaned forward intently. Emma held my hand, surprisingly calm. To my beloved wife, Delilah Morgan Thompson, I leave the remainder of my estate in various trusts as outlined in Schedule A with the following provisions. Harrison detailed the trust structures, the protections, the careful walls Marcus had built around our assets. The Russians grew increasingly agitated as they realized how ironclad everything was. Furthermore, Harrison continued, should any family member contest this will or attempt to claim funds through any means, $1 million shall immediately transfer to the Marcus Thompson Fund for elder fraud victims. What about life insurance? The lead Russian interrupted. Is not part of estate. Life insurance passes outside the will, Harrison explained. Mrs. Thompson is the sole beneficiary of all policies, which total $5 million. Mom's sharp intake of breath was audible. She'd believed the 2 million figure like everyone else. Now, Harrison said, pulling out a tablet, Mr. Thompson left video messages to be played under specific circumstances. Given today's attendees will be viewing message 3. The screen flickered to life. Marcus appeared sitting in this very room wearing his favorite blue tie. Hello, everyone. If you're watching this, it means certain people have shown up trying to claim money they think I owe them. So let me be crystal clear, I owe nothing to criminals. The Russian stiffened. Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength. Robert Sullivan borrowed $8 million from various criminal organizations using my name and forged documents as collateral. I discovered this 3 weeks ago and immediately reported it to the FBI. All debts contracted in my name are fraudulent. But this is one Russian snarled. No, Marcus said, as if anticipating the objection. The lie is what Robert told you. He killed me to prevent you from learning the truth. That he stole your money for a Ponzi scheme that's already collapsed. The $7 million the FBI found on his yacht. That's all that's left of your $8 million. He spent the rest on cars, boats, and bad investments. The lead Russian turned slowly to look at Mom. Your husband stole from us. She nodded miserably. He stole from everyone. Marcus wasn't finished. If you're watching this in the presence of my family, know this: they are under federal protection. Any action against them will result in immediate retaliation from law enforcement. Your best option is to pursue legal channels to recover funds from Robert Sullivan's seized assets. What are legal channels? The Russian leader spat. We do not use legal channels. Then you'll get nothing, Harrison said firmly. Mr. Sullivan's assets are frozen, his accounts seized. The FBI has the stolen money. Take it up with them. The tension in the room ratcheted higher. I felt Emma pressing closer to my side. Then Marcus delivered his final blow. One more thing. Check your phones, gentlemen, all of them, right now. The Russians exchanged glances but pulled out their cells. Whatever they saw made them go pale. While you've been sitting here, Marcus explained, FBI agents have been raiding every property, every business, every front company associated with your organization. The evidence I gathered doesn't just implicate Robert. It details your entire operation. Money laundering, trafficking, murder. It's all documented. When the leader whispered, the raid started 20 minutes ago. By now, your associates are either arrested or fleeing. Your accounts are frozen. Your empire is crumbling. Marcus smiled coldly. Never threaten a financial advisor's family. We know how to follow money better than anyone. The Russian stood as one. The leader looked at me with something like respect. Your husband was formidable. Yes, I said simply. He was. They left without another word, probably racing to salvage what they could. We'd later learn the FBI arrested 2 of them in the parking lot. The leader escaped, but never threatened us again. There's one final message, Harrison said once they were gone, for family only. Mom looked up hopefully. Despite everything, some part of her still wanted Marcus's forgiveness. The screen showed Marcus again, but softer now, sadder. Nancy, he began, and Mom flinched at hearing her name. I know you're watching this in custody. I know you're facing charges for your complicity, and I know you're hoping for forgiveness. Tears streamed down her face. I can't forgive you for enabling Robert, for staying silent while he murdered innocents, for choosing comfort over conscience. His voice was gentle but firm. But I can offer you this redemption is possible. Cooperate fully. Testify honestly, help the victims' families find closure, and maybe someday Emma will be able to look at you without fear. I will, Mom whispered. I promise. Marcus turned to address someone off camera. Me, I realized. Delilah, my love, the hardest part is over. The evidence is delivered. The criminals exposed, the money protected. Now comes healing. Use the resources I've left not just for security, but for joy. Travel with Emma. Show her beauty to balance the ugliness she's witnessed. Love, freely laugh, often live fully. His voice cracked slightly. I'm so proud of your strength, your integrity, your refusal to be corrupted by their greed. You saved our daughter from that poison. You saved yourself. And in doing so, you saved me too. Because my legacy isn't money or revenge. It's the love we shared and the lives we protected. Tell Emma her daddy loves her infinity plus one, and Delilah, thank you for 9 beautiful years. You made me the richest man alive. The screen went dark. In the silence, I heard Emma whisper, infinity plus 2 daddy. Harrison produced more documents. Victim compensation forms, FBI evidence receipts, formal notices of claim. The machinery of justice ground forward, slow but inexorable. As we prepared to leave, Mom spoke one last time. Delilah, tell Emma, tell her grandma's gonna try to be better, that I'll spend whatever time I have left trying to make amends. I looked at my daughter, who studied her grandmother with those wise eyes. Maybe, Emma said carefully, when you're done with timeout, you can write me letters. Daddy said everyone deserves second chances if they really mean it. Mom sobbed as the marshals led her away. She'd face trial, probably serve time, but she'd been given something precious: hope for redemption. Outside, the afternoon sun felt warm on our faces. FBI agents were wrapping up surveillance, the immediate danger past. Tom and Grace waited by their car, ready to escort us home. Is it over? Emma asked, looking up at me. This part is, I said, thinking of all the trials to come, the testimonies we'd have to give, the long journey to justice. But Daddy made sure we're safe. That's what matters. And the bad people can't hurt anyone else. No, sweetheart, they can't. As we drove home, I thought about Marcus's final words. He'd asked us to find joy, to live fully. It seemed impossible now with grief still fresh and trauma raw, but he'd given us the tools: financial security, physical safety, and most importantly, the knowledge that love could triumph over greed. The money he'd protected wouldn't bring him back, but it would ensure Emma grew up secure, educated, free from the poison that had infected my family. It would help victims recover what was stolen. It would fund the foundation preventing future elder fraud. Marcus had transformed his death into a weapon against those who'd caused it. But more than that, he'd transformed our pain into purpose. Mommy, Emma said as we pulled into our driveway, can we make blueberry pancakes for dinner? The dinosaur-shaped ones. Of course, baby. Good. Daddy's watching and he loves when we make his recipes. Margaret squeezed my shoulder from the back seat. We were broken but not beaten, grieving but not defeated. And tomorrow, for the first time since Marcus died, we'd try to find joy in small things: dinosaur pancakes, butterfly dresses, and the knowledge that love really was stronger than greed. The evidence was delivered. Justice was in motion. Now came the harder task: learning to live again. Tuesday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. David Harrison called to inform me that Robert had demanded a video conference from federal lockup. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Some morbid part of me needed to see him face his crimes. The meeting was arranged at Harrison's office with FBI agents and federal marshals present. Emma stayed home with Margaret, safely away from her grandfather's poison. I sat before a large monitor, waiting as the connection established to the federal detention center. Robert appeared on screen in an orange jumpsuit, shackled and flanked by guards. The mighty businessman, reduced to federal inmate number 47291, but his eyes still burned with that familiar arrogance. Delilah, he said my name like a curse. Robert, I wouldn't call him Dad anymore. I suppose you're proud of yourself, destroying your own family. You destroyed our family the day you chose murder over morality. He leaned forward, chains clanking. Everything I did was for this family, to build something lasting, something important, built on the bodies of innocent people. They were investments gone bad, business casualties. They were human beings. I slammed my hand on the table. Dorothy Chen volunteered at the Literacy Center. Harold Washington taught Sunday school. Betty Morrison had 12 grandchildren. You stole their final years for money. Money you're happy to keep, he sneered. Don't pretend you're giving Marcus's millions away. Actually, that's exactly what I'm doing. I pulled out documents. The Marcus Thompson Foundation for Elder Protection, funded with $3 million. Free financial planning for seniors, fraud prevention, education victim support services. His face purpled. You're giving away $3 million. To start, the foundation will receive ongoing funding from the victim restitution clause in Marcus's will. Every time you or Sarah or Mom tries to contest anything, another million transfers. That money should stay in the family. It is. It's going to all the families you destroyed. Harrison interrupted. Mr. Sullivan, you asked for this meeting. Was there a purpose beyond berating your daughter? Robert composed himself with visible effort. I want to make a deal. You have nothing to bargain with, Agent Foster said from off-screen. I have information, names, dates, connections, the whole network. Which you already documented in your yacht journals, I reminded him. The FBI has everything. Not everything. His smile was predatory. I know where the bodies are buried, literally. The room went quiet. Foster stepped into view. Are you confessing to additional murders? I'm saying people who crossed me over the years had accidents, but unlike recent events, those were handled more permanently. No bodies, no cases, no investigations. My stomach turned. How many? Does it matter? The point is, I can give you closure for families who've wondered for years in exchange for consideration. What kind of consideration? Foster asked. Transfer to minimum security, protective custody, sentence reduction recommendation. For multiple murder confessions, not happening. Robert's mask finally slipped completely. Then, they stay buried. Those families never know what happened. Is that what you want? Delilah, more suffering because of your stubbornness? My stubbornness. I stood rage flowing. You murdered my husband. You killed 7 elderly people I can prove, and apparently more I can't. You traumatized your granddaughter, and you have the audacity to blame me. Marcus forced my hand. If he'd just joined the business, he'd have become a murderer like you. I'm a survivor, Robert roared. I did what was necessary to build an empire. You built nothing. You're a parasite who fed on the vulnerable, and now you'll rot in a cell while Marcus's legacy helps the very people you tried to destroy. You sanctimonious little... He lunged forward, restrained by his chains. You think you've won. You think this ends with me. I have friends, associates, people who owe me favors. You'll always be looking over your shoulder. No, I said calmly, I won't. Because while you were building your empire of theft and murder, Marcus built something stronger. Trust, friendship, love. Every person at his funeral would protect Emma and me. Can you say the same? Who's protecting you now, Robert? The question hit home. His lawyers had abandoned him once the money ran out. His criminal associates were either arrested or distancing themselves. Even his fellow inmates would despise him once they learned he'd preyed on the elderly. This isn't over, he said, but the threat sounded hollow. Yes, it is. You're going to die in prison alone and forgotten, except as a cautionary tale. The Sullivan name will be synonymous with greed and betrayal. Your only legacy will be the foundation Marcus created to stop people like you. What about Sarah? His voice cracked slightly. She's my daughter. Is she? You threw away Mom's affair in her face for 23 years. You used Sarah's paternity as a weapon. Now she's facing 25 to life because she followed your example. I protected her, gave her everything. You gave her poison and called it love. Harrison cleared his throat. If we're done with the family therapy session, there are legal matters to address. Robert straightened, trying to salvage some dignity. I want to review the victim list, see who's claiming damages against my estate. Foster produced a thick folder. 137 victims have come forward so far. Total damages exceed $40 million. Robert's face went white. That's impossible. I only took $7 million. Interest, penalties, emotional damages, wrongful death suits. Foster enumerated. Your estate, even with seized assets, will cover maybe 10%. But my houses, my boats, my cars will be auctioned. Proceeds go to victims. You'll have nothing. The reality finally hit him. No money for appeals, for prison comforts, for any hope of future freedom. He'd spend his remaining years in a concrete cell wearing orange-eating cafeteria food. Delilah, he said desperately, you could help. Speak on my behalf. Tell them I wasn't always like this. Remember when you were little, the camping trips, teaching you to ride a bike? I remember, I said quietly. I also remember when that man died and a monster took his place. The father who taught me about integrity would be disgusted by what you became. People change, circumstances force adaptation. Marcus's circumstances were identical to yours. He chose to protect people. You chose to prey on them. That's the difference between a good man and a monster. Robert's shoulders slumped in defeat. For the first time, he looked like the 70-year-old man he was, tired, broken, facing death behind bars. Tell Emma, he started, then stopped. No, she's better off forgetting I exist. She's already forgotten. You're just the mean man who hurt her daddy. Margaret is her grandfather now in all the ways that matter. That final blow shattered his remaining composure. The man who terrorized so many was reduced to silent tears mourning not his victims, but his lost empire. The screen went black as guards led him away. In the silence that followed, I felt empty. Not satisfied, not vindicated, just hollow. The confrontation I'd built up in my mind had revealed only a pathetic old man clinging to delusions. Oh, you did well, Foster said gently. Most people couldn't face their father's killer with such composure. He stopped being my father the day he chose money over Marcus's life. Harrison gathered the papers. There's one more matter. Sarah's requested a meeting. She wants to apologize. No. The refusal was instant. She made her choices. She can live with them. Fair enough, though I should mention she's been far more cooperative than your father. Her testimony will ensure convictions for Brad's associates. Good. Maybe she'll find redemption in prison, but not through me. I left the office feeling strangely light. The confrontation had severed my last emotional ties to Robert Sullivan. He was just another criminal now facing justice for his crimes. At home, I found Emma and Margaret baking cookies. The kitchen smelled of vanilla and cinnamon warmth and safety. Emma ran to hug me, floor handprints decorating my jacket. Did you see the mean man? She asked. I did. He can't hurt anyone anymore. Good. Grandma Margaret and I are making cookies for Mrs. Patterson and the FBI agents to say thank you for protecting us. I looked at Margaret, who shrugged. The child insisted, said Daddy would want us to thank people with kindness. My brilliant, compassionate daughter, despite witnessing so much darkness, she chose light. Despite learning her grandfather was a killer, she chose love. That evening, as we delivered cookies to our protective detail, I thought about paths chosen. Robert had faced financial pressure and chosen murder. Marcus had faced death threats and chosen justice. Emma had faced trauma and chosen kindness. Mommy, Emma said as we walked home, I've been thinking, when I grow up, I want to help people like Daddy did. Maybe be a police officer or FBI agent. Stop bad people from hurting grandmas and grandpas. That's a wonderful goal, sweetheart. And I want to learn about money like Daddy so I can teach people how to protect themselves. Can we do that? Absolutely. Daddy would be so proud. She smiled, gap-toothed and beautiful. I know. He told me in my dream last night. He said the best revenge against bad people is living a good life. From the mouths of babes. Marcus's wisdom lived on in our daughter, untainted by the corruption that had claimed my birth family. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat in Marcus's office one last time. Tomorrow, I'd pack it up, donate his books to the library, transform the space into something new. But tonight, I needed to say goodbye. "We did it, my love," I whispered to his photograph. "They're all facing justice. Emma's safe. The foundation is funded. Your mission is complete." A warm breeze touched my face despite the closed windows. Marcus's cologne seemed to linger in the air. Probably my imagination, but comforting nonetheless. I pulled out the last item from his desk, our wedding album. We'd been so young, so optimistic, so certain love could conquer anything. And in the end, it had. Robert's greed had killed Marcus, but it hadn't destroyed his legacy. Love had proven stronger than murder, truth more powerful than lies, justice more enduring than crime. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Trials to testify at foundation work, to oversee a daughter to raise alone. But tonight, surrounded by memories of a good man's life, I felt something I hadn't experienced since that terrible phone call. Peace. The confrontation was over. The guilty would pay, and we would go on living, loving, choosing light over darkness. Just as Marcus had taught us. The official will reading was scheduled for 2 weeks after the initial video messages, allowing time for proper notifications and security arrangements. This time, it would be purely procedural. No surprise guests, no dramatic confrontations. Just the legal transfer of Marcus's earthly possessions. Harrison had arranged for a different room, smaller and more private. Only essential parties were invited: myself, Emma, Margaret, and the Foundation's newly appointed board members. The FBI no longer needed to monitor. Our enemies were either imprisoned or fled. Emma wore a new dress, yellow with daisies, because she said Daddy wouldn't want us wearing black anymore. She was right. Marcus had loved color and life. "Before we begin," Harrison said, organizing his papers, "I want you to know that Marcus spent hours crafting this document. Every word was chosen carefully with love and purpose." "We're ready," I assured him. Harrison began with the standard legal language, then moved to specifics. "To my daughter, Emma Grace Thompson, I leave the following in trust until her 25th birthday." The list was extensive but thoughtful. Her education fully funded through doctorate level, a modest annual allowance to teach financial responsibility, the birdhouse he'd built, which made her smile through tears, his collection of first edition children's books, and a series of letters to be delivered on significant birthdays, graduations, and her wedding day. "He thought of everything," Emma whispered. "To my mother, Margaret Rose Thompson. I leave the Vermont cottage we visited every summer with funds for maintenance and taxes in perpetuity. May you find peace there among the gardens we planted together." Margaret dabbed her eyes. "That beautiful boy. He knew how I loved that place." To Grace and Tom Chen, who stood by my family when blood relatives failed, I leave $50,000 and my profound gratitude. Friendship like yours is worth more than any inheritance." Grace, attending via video link, openly wept. Tom held her close, his own eyes suspiciously moist. The will continued, remembering everyone who'd shown kindness. Mrs. Patterson received funds to renovate her home. The Little League got new equipment and field improvements. Marcus's secretary, who'd helped gather evidence, received a year's salary and glowing recommendation letters. To the victims of Robert Sullivan's crimes, Harrison read, his voice heavy with emotion. "I leave the majority of my liquid assets to establish the Marcus Thompson Foundation for Elder Protection. Initial funding of $3 million with additional funds from any contested claims against this will." The foundation board members, a judge, a social worker, and a financial advisor, nodded solemnly. They'd already begun planning fraud prevention seminars and victim support services. "And finally, to my beloved wife, Delilah Morgan Thompson." Harrison paused, voice thick. Marcus actually asked to write this part himself in his own words. The formal legal language shifted to Marcus's familiar voice through Harrison's reading. My dearest Delilah, if you're hearing this, then our worst fears came true. But know that even in death, my love for you remains infinite and unwavering. I leave you our home free and clear to fill with new memories while cherishing old ones. I leave you my remaining assets in protected trusts, not because I don't trust your judgment, but because I know others will try to steal what we built together. More importantly, I leave you my complete faith in your strength. You survived a toxic family. You chose love over convenience. You're raising our daughter to be kind in a cruel world. You are the bravest person I've ever known. I have 3 final requests. First, travel. Take Emma to see the northern lights we always plan to visit. Show her Paris in spring Tokyo in cherry blossom season, the Grand Canyon at sunset. Let beauty heal what ugliness has wounded. Second, love again. Not now, not soon, but someday. Your heart is too generous to close forever. When you're ready, open it. Emma deserves to see you happy, and you deserve a partner for the journey ahead. Third, forgive. Not for them, but for you. Hatred is a poison that hurts the vessel more than the target. Your family chose their path, but don't let their darkness shadow your light. Thank you for 9 extraordinary years. Thank you for Emma. Thank you for showing me that love isn't just an emotion, but a choice we make daily. I chose you every morning and will continue choosing you beyond death. Until we meet again, all my love, Marcus. The room sat in profound silence. Even Harrison, who'd read it before, wiped away tears. Emma climbed into my lap, holding me as I shook with sobs I'd held back for weeks. He really loved us, Emma said softly. More than words can say, I managed. After tissues were passed and composure somewhat restored, Harrison produced one last envelope. This arrived this morning from federal prison. Sarah wanted it delivered during the reading. I almost refused, then curiosity won. The letter was short, written in Sarah's familiar dramatic script. Dear Lila, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I was wrong about everything. The money, the crimes, choosing Dad over you. Prison gives you time to think, and I've done nothing but. I remember when we were little before Dad's business consumed him. You always protected me, shared your toys, held my hand on the first day of school. You were the big sister I didn't deserve. I can't undo what I've done. Can't bring Marcus back or erase Emma's trauma, but I can do this. I'm testifying against everyone. Full cooperation. It won't reduce my sentence much, but maybe it helps balance the scales. Mom visits sometimes. She says Emma's doing well. I'm glad. Tell her Aunt Sarah is learning to be better. Maybe someday when we're all different people, we can try again. I'm sorry for everything. Sarah. I folded the letter carefully. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give. That belonged to Marcus and his victims, but I could acknowledge her attempt at redemption. Should I write back? I asked Margaret. That's your choice. But remember what Marcus asked. Forgive for your own peace, not their absolution. The reading concluded with administrative details. Marcus had been meticulous, leaving clear instructions for everything from utilities to his wine collection. By the time we finished, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Look, Mommy, Emma pointed out the window. Daddy's painting the sky for us. Outside, we found an unexpected gathering. Dozens of people lined the sidewalk. Marcus's clients, co-workers, kids he'd coached, families he'd helped. They held candles and flowers, creating an impromptu memorial. We wanted you to know, one elderly woman said, that Marcus's kindness lives on. We're all committed to watching out for each other, protecting the vulnerable like he protected us. He'd be so touched. I managed through fresh tears. No, she corrected gently. He'd expect nothing less. Marcus believed in community and people caring for people. We're just following his example. Emma moved through the crowd, hugging seniors and accepting their condolences with grace beyond her years. Margaret stood proud and straight, Marcus's strength evident in her bearing, and I felt him there in the love of strangers who'd become family in the foundation that would save future victims in our daughter's compassionate heart. That night, after everyone had gone and Emma slept peacefully, I sat on our porch despite the cold. The stars were brilliant, unmarred by clouds or city lights. "I heard you today," I whispered to the heavens. "Every word. I'll try to follow your wishes. The travel, the forgiveness, the loving again might take longer." A shooting star streaked across the sky. Emma would have called it Daddy winking at us. Maybe she'd be right. Inside, I found Margaret making tea in the kitchen. "Can't sleep either." "Too much to process," she admitted, "but it's good processing, healing kind." He really did think of everything. "Not everything," she corrected. "He didn't anticipate how strong you'd be, how brilliantly you'd handle his family, how fiercely you'd protect Emma. Marcus prepared for a war, but you won it with grace he couldn't have imagined." "We won it," I corrected, "all of us together." We sat in comfortable silence, two widows bound by loss and love, planning a future Marcus had made possible. Tomorrow would bring challenges, trials, testimony rebuilding. But tonight, we had peace. "You know what I keep thinking," Margaret said suddenly. "That money Robert killed for, it's doing exactly what he'd hate most, helping his victims, funding education, protecting the vulnerable." Marcus would appreciate the irony. "Poetic justice," I agreed. "The best kind." Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "I had a dream about Daddy. He said the will reading went perfectly. He's proud of us." "Come here, sweetheart." I opened my arms. She crawled into my lap, already falling back asleep. "He also said to tell Grandma Margaret the cottage roses will bloom beautifully next spring. Does that mean something?" Margaret gasped softly. "We planted those roses the last summer before he died. He said they'd bloom when our hearts healed enough to see beauty again." "Then we'd better be ready by spring," I said, holding my daughter close. The will had been read, the assets distributed, the legal chapter closed. But the real inheritance, love, strength, community hope, would compound daily, growing beyond what any document could capture. Marcus had left us wealthy in all the ways that truly mattered, and that was worth more than all the money Robert Sullivan had killed to steal. In the distance, a clock chimed midnight, a new day beginning, a fresh start. And somewhere, I was certain Marcus was smiling. 3 weeks after the will-reading life had settled into something resembling normal, Emma was back in school seeing a therapist who specialized in childhood trauma and slowly learning to sleep without nightmares. Margaret had moved in, permanently transforming our guest room into her sanctuary. The FBI surveillance was gone, our enemies imprisoned or vanished. It was a quiet Thursday morning when everything shifted again. Emma was at school, Margaret at her water aerobics class. I was sorting through Marcus's office, finally ready to pack away the last remnants when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw two people, Nancy Sullivan in civilian clothes with an ankle monitor visible beneath her pants, and a federal marshal standing discreetly behind her. 15 minutes, the marshal said when I opened the door. "That's all we authorized." Mom looked different. Prison had washed away her artificial perfection, revealing someone rawer, more real. Her hair showed gray roots, her face bore lines I'd never seen before, but her eyes held something new, clarity. "Thank you for seeing me," she said quietly. I led her to the living room, noting how she flinched at the family photos still displayed. Marcus smiled from every frame, a constant reminder of what her silence had cost. "I'm not here for forgiveness," she began. "I know that's impossible. I'm here because of Emma." "What about her?" Mom pulled out an envelope worn from handling. "I've been writing her letters like she suggested, but I realized there's something she needs to know first. Something about your father." My guard went up. "If this is some attempt to humanize him..." "No, the opposite. She set the envelope on the coffee table between us. 23 years ago, when Sarah was 5, I finally got the courage to leave your father. I'd saved money, secretly found an apartment, even consulted a lawyer. This was new. What happened? He found out, but instead of violence or threats, he did something worse. He told me the truth about his business. Her hands trembled. He showed me photos of people who'd crossed him, accidents he called them, made it clear that you and Sarah would have accidents too if I left. He threatened to kill his own children. He said Sarah wasn't his, so she didn't count. And you were too much like me, too soft. He could always make more children with his next wife. She laughed bitterly. That's when I realized I wasn't married to a man, but a monster. So you stayed. I stayed, and every year the threats got worse, the crimes bigger, until I was so deep I couldn't see sky anymore. She pushed the envelope closer. This is my confession. Not the sanitized version I gave the FBI, but everything. Every crime I knew about, every victim I failed to warn, every time I chose silence over someone's life. Why give this to me? Because Emma deserves the truth when she's older. Not the family fairy tale, but reality. So she understands that evil doesn't announce itself with horns and pitchforks. It comes wearing familiar faces, offering comfort and security. I picked up the envelope, feeling its weight. This will add years to your sentence. Good. I've earned them. She stood to leave, then paused. I know you'll raise Emma right, but when she's old enough, tell her about the choices. How one compromise leads to another until you're drowning in blood. Tell her strength isn't never falling. It's choosing to get up while you still can. The marshal appeared at the door. Time was up. Nancy. I called as they reached the porch. She turned. I'll give Emma the letter when she's ready. Her smile was sad but genuine. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. After they left, I sat with the envelope debating whether to open it. Finally, curiosity won. Inside were pages of neat handwriting detailing crimes spanning 2 decades. But it was the final paragraph that stopped my breath. My greatest crime wasn't the murders I enabled, but the daughter I failed. Delilah chose love over money, integrity over security. She became everything I should have been. I'm proud of her, even though I have no right to be. Tell Emma her mother is the woman I wish I'd had the courage to become. I was still processing when my phone rang. David Harrison, urgent. Delilah, you need to come to my office immediately. Bring Emma's birth certificate and any documents Marcus might have hidden. What's wrong? I'll explain when you get here. Just hurry. I grabbed the documents and the flash drive from Marcus's birdhouse, my mind racing. What new disaster was unfolding? Harrison's office was crowded. FBI agents Foster and Kim, a woman I didn't recognize in an expensive suit, and Harrison looking grim. Oh, sit, Harrison commanded. This is Amanda Worthington from Child Protective Services. My blood froze. Why is CPS here? Worthington spoke with practiced authority. We received a complaint alleging you're an unfit mother, that Emma's living situation is dangerous, and requesting emergency custody transfer. From who? Your father, from prison. The audacity took my breath away. He's serving life for murder. Nevertheless, he's filed claiming grandparental rights, alleging you're mentally unstable from grief, and exposing Emma to dangerous situations. This is insane. Harrison intervened. It is, but we need to respond properly. That's why everyone's here. Agent Foster leaned forward. We believe this is Robert's final play. He can't get the money, can't get freedom, so he's trying to take what you love most. Can he actually win? No, Worthington said firmly, but he can make your life hell. Investigations, court hearings, supervised visits. Unless what? Harrison pulled out a thick folder. Unless we end this definitively. Marcus anticipated something like this. He spread out documents. Emma's adoption papers. The room spun. What? Marcus adopted Emma officially 2 years ago, Harrison explained. changed her birth certificate, sealed the original records. Legally, Robert Sullivan has no biological connection to Emma Thompson. But how I would have known? You did know. You signed the papers. He showed me documents with my signature. Marcus presented them as insurance update school forms. You signed without reading carefully. I stared at my signature, remembering Marcus's stack of routine paperwork that summer. He tricked me. He protected you. Both of you. Harrison pulled up a video on his laptop. He also left this to be played if anyone challenged custody. Marcus appeared on screen looking tired but determined. This was recent, maybe days before his death. If you're watching this, someone's trying to take Emma from Delilah. So let me be clear, Emma is my daughter in every way that matters. I adopted her legally to sever any claim Robert Sullivan might make. Blood doesn't make family. Love does. He held up documents. These are DNA tests proving Robert Sullivan has no biological connection to Emma Thompson. Because Emma Thompson isn't Delilah Sullivan's daughter. She's Delilah Thompson's daughter. My wife took my name, and so did our child. The video continued with Marcus detailing the legal protections he'd built, but I was stuck on his words. Blood doesn't make family. Love does. This is airtight, Worthington announced after reviewing everything. No judge would even hear Robert's case with this evidence. I'll file dismissal papers today. After everyone left except Harrison, I sat in stunned silence. You're angry, he observed. I'm confused. Why didn't Marcus tell me? Because he knew you'd resist. You'd insist on honesty, transparency, but Marcus was playing a longer game. He knew Robert would use any weapon available, including Emma, so he removed that weapon. By lying to me. By protecting you, there's a difference. I thought about all Marcus's secrets. The hidden evidence, the FBI cooperation, the adoption, each one designed to shield us from harm. There's one more thing, Harrison said quietly. The envelope Emma's supposed to give someone, from the birdhouse. I'd forgotten about that. The small envelope Emma had carried to the will reading, but never delivered. Who was it for? You. But Marcus said Emma should give it to you when you were ready to read it, when you could see past anger to understanding. Was I ready? The day's revelations had shaken me, but I needed to know. That evening after dinner, I asked Emma about the envelope. Oh, she ran to her room, returning with it. Daddy said to give this to you when you stopped being mad at him for keeping secrets. Are you still mad? I thought about it honestly. No, sweetheart, not anymore. She handed it over solemnly. He said it explains everything. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet in Marcus's handwriting. My dearest Delilah, if you're reading this, you've discovered my deceptions. The adoption, the hidden evidence, the web of protections I built without your knowledge. You have every right to be angry. But please understand, I didn't lie because I didn't trust you. I lied because I trusted you completely. Trusted you to be honest, to demand truth, to insist on transparency. Those beautiful qualities would have gotten you killed. Your father was always gonna come for Emma. If not for money, then for control. For revenge, for the sick pleasure of causing pain. I couldn't allow that. So I became what I despised, a keeper of secrets, a manipulator of truth. I hated every deception even as I knew they were necessary, because losing your trust temporarily was better than losing you permanently. I pray you can forgive me. Not today, maybe not for years, but someday. When Emma's safe and free and happy, know that every lie I told was in service of that truth. You are the love of my life. Emma is our greatest achievement. Protecting you both was my sacred duty. If I failed in method, I hope I succeeded in purpose. Forever yours in truth and lies, Marcus. Tears blurred the words. Even from beyond death, Marcus was still explaining, still protecting, still loving us in his complicated way. What did it say? Emma asked anxiously. That Daddy loved us more than anything. And sometimes love means making hard choices. She nodded sagely, like when I lie about brushing my teeth, but you check anyway because cavities hurt worse than honesty. Out of the mouths of babes, exactly like that. That night, I called Harrison back. File whatever paperwork necessary to make Robert's claim disappear permanently. Use every protection Marcus built. He died for this. We're going to honor that sacrifice. Understood. For what it's worth, Marcus would be proud of you. You're choosing pragmatism over idealism, protection over principle. No, I corrected. I'm choosing love over everything else, just like he did. Later, Margaret and I sat on the porch despite the November cold wrapped in quilts and processing the day. He really thought of everything, she marveled. Almost everything. He didn't anticipate dying before explaining it all, Megwai. Would you have let him? If he'd told you about the adoption, the deceptions? I considered honestly. Probably not. I'd have insisted on facing things honestly together. And you'd all be dead now, Margaret said bluntly. Marcus knew the enemy better than you did. He fought darkness with darkness to preserve your light. A text interrupted our discussion. Unknown number. Your father's custody claim has been withdrawn permanently. He sends a message you win this round. There would be no more rounds. Every weapon had been stripped away, every avenue blocked. Marcus had built our fortress too well for even Robert's malice to penetrate. Emma appeared in her pajamas. Can't sleep. I keep thinking about the envelope. Come here, baby. She crawled onto my lap, and the three of us sat together under the stars. Are you sad Daddy kept secrets? She asked. A little, but mostly I'm grateful he loved us enough to do hard things. Like shots at the doctor. Exactly like that. They hurt, but keep us healthy. She yawned, settling deeper. I think Daddy knew lots of stuff we didn't. Like how he knew I needed Mr. Buttons before I was born, so he bought him early. Or how he recorded bedtime stories before his trip in case he couldn't come back. My heart stopped. What bedtime stories? On his phone, he made 27 stories for me. Said if he ever couldn't tuck me in, I should listen to one. Another secret, another gift, another piece of Marcus waiting to be discovered. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Yeah, he really loved us big. As Emma drifted off, I held her close, feeling Marcus's presence in every protection he'd built, every deception he'd crafted, every sacrifice he'd made. The envelope had contained more than explanations. It held absolution. For him and for me. We'd both done what we thought best with incomplete information and imperfect choices. But love had guided us through. Love had won. Thank you, I whispered to the stars, for everything, even the lies. Especially the lies, because sometimes the greatest truth is knowing when not to tell it. Marcus had understood that. Now, finally, so did I. 6 months later, spring arrived in Burlington with a burst of color that would have made Marcus smile. The roses at Margaret's cottage had indeed bloomed spectacularly, their petals unfurling like promises kept. Emma and I stood in the garden planting new bulbs while Margaret directed from her lawn chair. The tulips go there, she instructed, pointing with her cane. Marcus always said tulips were hope flowers. They push through frozen ground to find the sun. Emma carefully placed each bulb, her small hands now steady and sure. The nightmares had faded. Therapy had helped, but time and love had done most of the healing. Mommy, do you think Daddy can see our garden from heaven? I think he sees everything beautiful we do, I assured her. Good, because I want him to see how much we've grown. And we had grown. In ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark October days. The trials had concluded 2 months ago. Robert got life without parole for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and racketeering. The judge called him a predator who viewed the elderly as prey and showed no mercy. Sarah received 25 years, but would be eligible for a parole in 15 with good behavior. She testified against everyone helping convict Brad's associates and the corrupt cops who'd covered up the accidents. Nancy got 10 years, but was already in a minimum security facility teaching literacy to other inmates and writing letters to Emma that I saved for when she was older. The Russian mob connections had evaporated once the money was confirmed gone, their leadership apparently deciding we weren't worth the FBI attention. The Marcus Thompson Foundation had helped 43 elderly victims recover portions of their lost savings. We'd funded free financial planning seminars across Vermont and were expanding to New Hampshire. Eleanor Watson, Dorothy Chen's friend, served on our board, fierce in her determination to prevent future tragedies. "Mail's here," Emma called, running to get it. She returned with a thick manila envelope that made my pulse quicken. I recognized the return address, the publisher who'd been interested in our story. "What's that?" Margaret asked. "Remember the writer who attended the trial? She wanted to turn everything into a book, help other families recognize the warning signs of elder fraud." And I opened the envelope, hands trembling slightly. Inside was a contract and a letter. "Dear Delilah, your story moved our entire editorial board to tears. Marcus's courage, your strength, and Emma's resilience deserve to be shared with the world. We're offering an advance of $100,000 with all proceeds going to the Marcus Thompson Foundation as you requested. The book will be titled Love versus Greed, A Family's Fight for Justice. We believe it will save lives by showing how predators operate and how families can protect themselves. Marcus's legacy continues through you. Sincerely, Rebecca Martinez, Senior Editor." $100,000 for the foundation, Margaret breathed. "Plus royalties, every book sold helps another family avoid our tragedy." Emma danced around the garden. "Daddy's story is going to be in libraries. Kids can read about how brave he was." That afternoon, we visited Marcus's grave. The headstone was simple but elegant, just as he would have wanted. Marcus Thompson, beloved husband, father, son, and protector of the innocent. Fresh flowers surrounded it, not just from us, but from the dozens of lives he'd touched. Someone had left a note. "You saved my grandmother's retirement. We'll never forget." Emma placed her newest drawing against the stone, a picture of our family under a rainbow. She'd included Marcus floating on a cloud, still watching over us. "Hi, Daddy," she said conversationally. "Guess what I got an A on my math test? The one about compound interest you taught me. Mrs. Johnson says I understand money better than most adults." She chatted about school friends, her plans to join Little League like the kids Marcus had coached. I let her talk, knowing these conversations helped her process grief in healthy ways. "Oh, and Mommy went on a date last week," Emma added casually. "Emma," I protested. "What you said we should tell Daddy important stuff." She turned back to the grave. "His name is Daniel. He's a teacher at the middle school, and he made Mommy laugh. Real laughs, not the fake ones she does when she's sad." Margaret chuckled. "From the mouths of babes." It was true. Daniel Chen, no relation to Grace and Tom, had asked me to coffee after we'd met at a foundation event. He'd lost his father to a different kind of scam and understood the anger, the grief, the slow journey back to trusting people. "It was just coffee," I said defensively. "He's taking her to dinner next week," Emma stage whispered to the headstone. "Somewhere fancy that requires the pretty dress." Even in death, I could feel Marcus's amusement. He'd wanted me to find happiness again, though I hadn't expected it to happen so soon. But Daniel wasn't a replacement. He was a new chapter in a story that would always include Marcus. As we prepared to leave, Emma had one more thing to say. "Daddy, I've been thinking about what you said in your letter, about choosing love over money. I get it now. The bad people chose wrong, and it made them ugly inside. But we chose right, and it made us beautiful inside. That's why we won, isn't it? Because beautiful always beats ugly in the end." A warm breeze rustled the roses someone had planted by Marcus's grave. They were just budding, promising blooms to come. "It's time to go," Margaret said gently. "We're having dinner with Grace and Tom, remember?" Our family had expanded in unexpected ways. Grace and Tom were Emma's unofficial aunt and uncle. Mrs. Patterson joined us for Sunday dinners. Marcus's mother had become the grandmother I'd always wished for Emma. Even some of Marcus's elderly clients had adopted us, creating a network of surrogate grandparents who showered Emma with love and wisdom. As we drove home, Emma asked suddenly, "Do you think Sarah's okay in prison?" The question surprised me. We rarely talked about my sister anymore. "I hope she's learning to be better," I answered honestly. "Maybe when she gets out, she'll be different. Like how butterflies start as caterpillars but transform into something beautiful." Maybe. I agreed, though I had my doubts. Some people transformed. Others just learned to hide their true nature better. That evening, as our chosen family gathered around the dinner table, I watched Emma help Margaret with her chair, saw her excitedly tell Tom about her science project, noticed how she made sure everyone was included in conversation. Marcus's values lived on in her every action. A toast. Grace proposed raising her glass to Marcus, who brought us all together, to Delilah, who showed us what courage looks like, to Emma, who reminds us why we fight for justice, and to family, the one we choose, not the one we're born into. To family, we echoed. After dinner, I found myself in Marcus's former office, now transformed into the foundation's headquarters. His photo watched from the wall as I worked on grant applications. We'd received requests from 3 other states wanting to replicate our elder protection model. "You did this," I told his picture. "You turned tragedy into purpose." My phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. "Hope family dinner was wonderful. Looking forward to Saturday. P.S. Emma sent me a list of your favorite restaurants. That kid's something special." She was. Despite everything she'd witnessed, Emma had chosen joy. Despite learning about human evil, she radiated goodness. Despite losing her father, she'd found love multiplied in unexpected places. Later, as I tucked her into bed, she asked, "Mommy, are we rich?" "In money, we're comfortable. Daddy made sure we'd never worry about bills or college or emergencies." "But are we rich in the important way?" I thought about our full house, loyal friends, meaningful work, and slowly healing hearts. "Yes, sweetheart, we're very rich in the important way." "Good, because Daddy said love rich is better than money rich, and I think we're love millionaires." "Be billionaires," I corrected, kissing her forehead. "Definitely love billionaires." As she drifted off, I reflected on our journey. 6 months ago, I'd stood in my kitchen, abandoned by blood family in my darkest hour. Today, I was surrounded by chosen family who'd never desert us. 6 months ago, I'd wondered how to explain human cruelty to my daughter. Today, she taught others about choosing kindness. The Marcus Thompson Foundation was thriving. Our story would help other families. Emma was healing and happy. I was learning to open my heart again. Even Margaret had found purpose in her golden years, becoming a fierce advocate for elder rights. Robert Sullivan had killed Marcus for money he'd never touch, but in his greed, he'd created something he never intended. A movement. Every family we helped, every senior we protected, every fraud we prevented was Marcus's victory over his killer. I performed my nightly ritual, checking locks and alarms. Old habits died hard, but the real threats were gone. The monsters were caged. The rest were just shadows that fled when faced with light. Outside, spring rain began falling, gentle and cleansing. Somewhere roses were drinking deeply, preparing to bloom. Somewhere Marcus was smiling, knowing his girls were safe. Somewhere justice and love were winning battles against greed and hate. Thank you," I whispered to the rain, to the stars hidden behind clouds, to the man whose love transcended death, for everything. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The foundation had 3 events planned. Emma had softball tryouts. I had coffee with a publisher about the book. Daniel and I had our dinner date. Life was moving forward, not leaving Marcus behind, but carrying him with us in every choice to help others, every decision to choose love over fear. But tonight, in our warm house filled with Margaret's humming and Emma's peaceful breathing, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before that terrible phone call. Complete. Not perfect, not without scar tissue, not forgetting the pain, but complete in the way broken things become when they're mended with gold, stronger and more beautiful for having been shattered and rebuilt. The prosecutor had asked me during the trial if I wanted revenge against my father. I'd answered honestly, no. Revenge was a poison that would have contaminated Emma's pure heart. Justice was enough. Love was everything. As sleep finally came, I heard Marcus's voice one last time carried on the rain. Live beautifully, love fiercely, protect faithfully. That's all I ever wanted for you both. We will, I promised the darkness. We are. And in that promise lay our new beginning. Not an ending to grief, but a transformation of it into purpose, pain into compassion, loss into legacy. The morning would come with sunrise and roses and Emma's laughter. We would meet it together, our strange and beautiful chosen family, proof that love multiplies when divided, and that the best revenge against those who choose greed is a life lived generously. Marcus had won. We had won. Love had won. And that victory would echo through every life we touched, every elder we protected, every family we saved from predators who thought money mattered more than souls. His story would live forever, not as a tragedy, but as a triumph. Not as an ending, but as a beginning. Not as a death, but as a transformation into something larger than any single life could contain. Rest well, my love, I whispered. We've got it from here. And we did. Forever and always, infinity plus one. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining our family's journey from darkness to light. I have a question for you. What would you do if you discovered your own family was capable of such evil? Would you choose justice or revenge, blood or truth? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or reminded you to protect the vulnerable in your own life, please consider sharing it with others who might need to hear it. Like and subscribe to hear more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances and the choices that define us. Remember, in the battle between love and greed, love always wins. It just sometimes takes longer than we'd like. Watch over your elderly loved ones. Trust your instincts about people who seem too interested in money. And never, ever underestimate the power of chosen family to heal wounds inflicted by blood relatives. Until next time, choose love, choose light, and choose each other. The world has enough Robert Sullivans. Be a Marcus Thompson instead. Thank you for listening to our story. May you find your own love billions and guard them fiercely.